Thanks again for bringing the young people along today. And I suppose it'll give them a little practice for the real thing. I know everybody wants to just go home now. That was really good. Just relaxed us, didn't it? So we left after the item 8. Oh, we're on item 8 now. The Clydeplan Regional Spatial Strategy, Future Governance. And we have a motion from Councillor McNaughton, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Been sent. Okay, so it should be dropping into your inbox. I'll give you a wee minute or two to have a read.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. The Glasgow and the Clyde Valley Strategic Development Planning Authority Joint Committee is a long title, but basically it's Clydeplan. But I'm going to start with a brief reference to local history. In the 1940s, in this town, a young planner in Paisley Borough Council called Bob Grieve, and I've spoken about him before. Professor Sir Robert Grieve, as he would become, was the greatest planner of his generation. He was a visionary town planner who recognised people and their environment as the core of good planning. Bob Grieve went on to become the Chief Planning Officer for Scotland. He was the first chair of the Highlands and Islands Development Board, and he was a professor of town and regional planning at the University of Glasgow. However, it's Bob Grieve's central role in developing Abercrombie's Clyde Valley Regional Plan in 1946 that's most relevant to us today. This was a pioneering example of regional planning that was held as best practice on an international stage. Regional planning was later enshrined in local government structures with regional councils, and since reorganisation of local government in 1996, a joint committee of 8 councils working cooperatively on planning issues that have cross-border implications. That system has served us well. The Clydeplan Joint Committee, serviced by this council, has engendered and encouraged coordination and cooperation between its 8 constituent councils. A common theme in these regional planning structures is the democratically accountability and control through locally elected councillors. Now we're facing the biggest shake-up in planning with the new National Planning Framework 4. That's a good news story, but part of that change replaces the statutory Clydeplan with a new regional spatial strategy, the detail of which has yet to emerge. Just this week, the Scottish Government issued an update, and I quote, "Work on drafting the regional spatial strategy statutory guidance will commence in 2024, next year, bringing together a range of interests in working at this regional scale." So we're being asked ahead of the drafting of the statutory guidance to consider winding up the democratic link to regional planning through the Clydeplan Joint Committee to be replaced by the City Region Cabinet. So let's examine the democratic credentials of that suggestion. A cabinet system where Renfrewshire Council is represented by the leader of the council, who, when decisions have been taken about Renfrewshire, must declare an interest and take no part in the decision. I'd remind members that this new regional spatial strategy will have significant influence on Renfrewshire, and any future local development plan must take it into account. So I'm not saying that the joint committee approach must continue forever, merely that it's our democratic link to the development of the new regional spatial strategy, and it should continue while new structures, hopefully democratic in nature, are developed to produce the regional spatial strategy. So this is a question of democracy, and I'd ask you to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor McNaughton. Councillor Patterson, do you want to say anything at the moment?
No, I'll just formally second, Provost, thank you.
Okay, Ian, do you want to say anything? You're happy to accept it? Okay, we have no other motions or amendments? No? No? Okay, we agree? Okay, it brings us on to the motions themselves, which is item 9 is motion 1, and that's Councillors Andy Doig and John Hood. Councillor Andy Doig.
Good morning, Provost. The motion here, motion 1, is a subject that's well known to nearly every elected member here in the chamber. The focus on this motion, as opposed to previous motions have been put forward on this topic, and I have to say that every side of this chamber has put forward motions on the subject of the upgrade of A737. SNP, myself as independent, Labour and the Tory group put up the last motion, I think, on the subject, which I think was 2 years ago. The focus here on this motion here is very clearly on the road safety element. We're calling on the upgrade of the A737 not for vanity reasons. This isn't a vanity project of creating some kind of super highway. We can't do that. The topography of the A737 between Kilbarchan and Beith doesn't allow that. But there are certainly key safety features that need to be addressed. I'll touch on them. There's a distinct camber on the road as you leave Kilbarchan, as you head towards the Howwood Junction. It's very, very bad because that's at a point in the road where traffic tends to accelerate. It's a wide, long stretch, and at that point, traffic accelerates. That's a hot spot for accidents. The Howwood Junction itself is dreadful, and that's a hot spot for accidents. It's exacerbated, I think, by the fact that there's a high volume of agricultural traffic on that part of the A737 that I think planners and council officers here and planners in Edinburgh just won't be aware of. In Ward 9, there's about 260 farms and small steadings, and a lot of these will go into the A737 at some stage at that point. It's a wee bit like the old A85 Perth to Dundee Road, which was notorious as well for having issues with traffic safety due to agricultural traffic. And thirdly, there's Risk Brae, which is beyond the Howwood Junction. It's a series of bends, and there's some small holdings off that as well. An awful lot of the accidents that happen tend to be around about there. But these are 3 hot spots that I really do think we need to get something done about this. It's essential, really. And I'm really looking to our local MSPs of all parties to take up the cudgels. We need to have a distinct budget. We need to have a distinct timescale. I mean, in a few short years, it'll be the case that all our local MSPs will be up for re-election. They'll be looking for support. And I think would be justified. Residents in Howwood and Kilbarchan and Lochwinnoch and Johns would be justified to say, well, what have you did about this issue? So I'm making a plea that they should, for our local MSPs today, and I'm thinking especially, I think of Russell Finlay, Ross Greer, Tom Arthur, and Neil Bibby. I'm making a plea to them to form a united front to push the case at Holyrood to get these upgrades carried out. I can look with envy, Provost, and my old friend and former party colleague Fergus Ewing has been a staunch voice in favour of the upgrade of the A9. I wish we had a similar voice here. I wish we had a similar voice here in Renfrewshire to speak up for the upgrade to the A737. I really do. But it's an open. We're in this chamber. We're pushing at an open door because all parties have supported these measures for some number of years. The fight is now in Holyrood, but we're desperately looking for MSPs to take up that fight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Doig. Councillor Hood, before we move on, I don't think we have any amendments, or do we? Councillor Graham? Okay.
I'm just going to comment on it, that's all.
Sure. I don't know what that was.
A voice.
We've got an infiltrator. There's a comment that you have. Okay. Can I bring in Councillor Gillian Graham?
Thank you very much, Provost. I think it was me you heard. Yeah, it'll come as no surprise, but I am fully supportive of Councillor Doig and Councillor Hood's motion. Anybody who's been on the A737 between Kilbarchan and Lochwinnoch and down to Beith, you'll know how bad it is. There is certain hotspots along the road. It's dangerous. It's agricultural traffic. It's also very poor lighting when you go there. And yes, people do speed, but the road is just not fit for purpose. And all credit to Andy. He's been fighting this for a long time. I know that. And I'm fully supportive of this motion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Hood, did you want to come in just now?
I never got formally seconded it.
You,
Right.
sorry,
No,
I thought you did. I thought you said that.
Sorry. Just reserve the right to come in if.
Okay. I was doing that automatically for you. Okay, Councillor Chris Gilmour.
Thank you, Provost. Again, like my colleagues, very happy to support this motion. We are desperate to see some investment in the west coast of Scotland, but I think particularly A737, which has seen a huge volume of increase in traffic as the airstrips become developed and build more houses there. We've seen more and more computers. Despite the fact that COVID has changed working practices, we still see a huge volume of traffic. What I would say is that I note this morning that the Auditor General for Scotland, Stephen Boyle, has indicated that we are going to be, there's 26 billion shortfall in funding which will obviously affect infrastructure projects. But what I would say to the council is, let us not be deterred by that fact. Money beyond 2025 has still got to be given out, and some of that money should come to the A737 within Renfrewshire. As Councillor Doig indicates, it's crying out for investment. There have been fatalities on the road, but there are always several minor accidents on which has become a major trunk route. You're effectively going from a dual carriageway to a country road within about 2 miles. And we're seeing the effect. Everybody that goes about Renfrewshire does the business, goes to visit the wonderful Castle Semple and goes down to that area, will see that it's often nose-to-tail traffic and people are, as has been said, are taking risks to overtake on that road, which is just not fit for purpose. So I support the motion 100%. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmour. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I'm good to see this motion today. It would be good to see improvements to the A737. We can all agree with that, I think, but it's also important that feeder roads are also looked at, such as the B789 interchange. That's the Barochan Road at Johnston. That interchange definitely needs some work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Neil Graham, I have noted your interests. Councillor Graham.
Do you want me to tell you what it is, or?
If you want, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just to declare a connection, just because Councillor Andy Doig mentioned him by name, that I work in Russell Finley's MSP office. But it's just a connection, and just because he mentioned him by name, so I'll be staying in the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Councillor Graham. Okay, can we agree the motion then? Yeah, agreed. Next is motion 2, that's item 10 in the agenda. That motion, that's by Councillors Andy Doig and John Hood, and we have 2 amendments to this motion. Okay, I can have them sent over.
Can we have a quick look at the amendments first,
Okay.
Rob?
Yeah, you should have them now. Andy? have you
Right,
had an
okay, I'm
opportunity to
fine.
read?
Yeah, Provost, thank you very much. In terms of the amendments, I'm accepting the Labour amendment because I feel that it does add to the fact that we need strict enforcement and we need to have a scheme, a mandatory scheme that that works. And I think that was the problem with the old scheme pre-1987. So I'm accepting the Labour amendments. I'm not accepting the SNP amendment is essentially a direct negative to the motion. It's not an amendment, it rewrites the whole motion. Essentially, it's a direct negative. We have to have a mandatory scheme, Provost. If you look at I've spoken to constituents about this matter in the last 3-4 weeks. I've not spoken to one constituent in my ward who doesn't believe the time is right for the reintroduction of a mandatory dog licensing scheme that actually works and is actually enforced. The RSPCA, I know the Dogs Trust position. I'm actually a supporter and a donator, a donor to the Dogs Trust. I know their position, but I think they're out of public opinion. They're definitely out of step with public opinion, I think, on this issue. By contrast to that, the RSPCA do support the reintroduction of a mandatory dog licensing scheme for dog welfare reasons. And in the Johnson Veterinary Products Pet Owners Report this year, it showed that 71% of UK pet owners wanted it brought back. Now, I think in terms of not having a mandatory scheme, the UK, Scotland and the UK are actually the international outliers here. Germany, Australia, the Netherlands, Ireland, India and New Zealand all have effective dog licensing mandatory schemes. Most of them are administered at local level, and I think that's where it needs to be. Obviously, the needs of dog support and dog welfare in Glasgow would be different to that in the Highlands, and that's why I think it has to be administered at local authority level. Now, if you look at the German scheme as one of the most successful schemes, and I think we could emulate that to good effect. And it's also a question, essentially, you can see the number of attacks, dog attacks, by the XL bullies, and there's great public concern about this. The only way you're going to tackle unethical breeders is to have a regulatory mandatory structure. That's the only way to do it. It's the first step to do it. Dog ownership, Provost, and I'll finish on this, is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a great responsibility. And we have to support our constituents who go down that road. And I love dogs. I've always had dogs, and we're trying to get a new dog, but we've got to give people the right support with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Hood?
Right, thank you very much. As a responsible dog owner myself, I'm about every single day, at least 3 times a day. I'm out with the dog because she's on a diet and she needs walking. But
Is that you and the dog?
well, I think both. Yeah, I do tend to speak to a lot of dog owners, and there's a lot out there that really want it, but it's a way of sort of controlling the issues with with dogs. In my opinion, it's not the dog's fault, but it's the owner's fault, where it's not trained properly, and it needs to be regulated. Dogs, and I can remember back. I think my dad said, which the dogs used to be licensed at one stage, and I just think it fell away. So that's my spin on it.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. The first amendment was by Councillor Montgomery and Gillian Graham. Now that amendment's been accepted. Councillor Montgomery, do you still want to come in and speak to it?
Yeah, I'll just come in very briefly, Provost. And thanks to Councillor Doig for accepting the addition. It was just to explain our amendment. It was just to tighten it up a wee bit. As Councillor Doig alluded to, we used to have dog licensing in this country, but nobody actually paid attention to it. So it was kind of pointless. So any licensing system has to be robustly enforced as well, and there has to be real powers attached to it. That was our reason behind that. And the second bit, of course, a proper dog licensing scheme would cost serious money, and that's why we would call on the Scottish Government to bear that in mind, because I don't think it's something that we could pay from existing council budgets, given some of the subjects we've already discussed this morning. But that's essentially me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Graham? Jill Graham?
Thank you very much, Provost. I'll keep it short. I think, I agree with everything that's been said. We had quite a long discussion about how you could actually enforce a licensing scheme, because I mean, the dog tags are mandatory at the moment, and I don't believe that many people actually use them. And how would you police it? And we felt that probably the licensing scheme should be along the lines of microchipping. So if you buy a dog from a reputable breeder, or you get it from the Dogs Trust or SPCA, sorry, that dog will be microchipped. And you can then know that you've bought it from a responsible person. When you take the dog to the vet, you can then change the address. So there's a way of actually doing this that may not be as expensive as you think, but microchipping is probably the best way. If you get a dog that's not microchipped, then you have to then doubt, where have you got, this is one of my dogs, you have to think, who have I bought this from? What's its background? I do think we need to do something about this. And I've got 3 dogs myself, and they're all microchipped. We do have to look at dogs being handed over in car parks, and dogs being bred 2 sizes for fighting, and some of these XL bullies they're using steroids on the dogs. So you know, Councillor Hood's right, it is about ownership. It's the owners that have to be responsible here. So yes, we support the motion as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. That's a black mark, Andy. Okay, we have an amendment which has not been accepted by the movers of the motion. That's by Lisa Marie Hughes and Councillor Jennifer Adam. Lisa Marie.
So I just want to start by saying that actually Councillor Doig and I have previously had a discussion about this week. So there is an agreement that we need to do something. And I think that the 2021 regulations are the way to do that. Can people just be like a wee bit quieter? I'm getting lots of feedback. I think the 2021 regulations are the way to do that. If I could have amended Andy's resolution, I would have, but Andy, you're right, I've written like a wee story, so my delete and replace was easier, but please note that I said it was a replacement, so you can't shout at me for that. My position and the position of dog welfare organisations like Dogs Trust is that we should rigorously enforce the 2021 regulations, which put the onus on breeders to be registered and on councils to ensure that they are. I think that is the way to go. When people have been making their contributions today, several have said how we regulate it. It's about the breeders. It's about dogs being handed over in car parks. All of those things can be addressed by the breeders being regulated. I have real issues with licensing owners because, let's face it, as another dog owner, because we've all declared our interest here, I have my 2nd rescue dog. As another dog owner, if there was a licence, I would pay it because I'm a responsible dog owner. What's going to happen with this scheme is that of the 34% of households in Renfrewshire that have dogs, the responsible ones are going to pay it, and it's going to be virtually impossible to enforce getting the other ones to pay. So effectively, you're placing a burden of cost on people already doing the work. And the other concern I really have as someone who is a rescue dog owner is that if you're someone who can afford to go out and spend lots of money on an expensive dog, something like a licence is probably not too expensive for you. But if you're someone who's going to rescue a dog who may have additional needs, may be challenging, an additional burden during a cost of living crisis is going to prevent people rescuing dogs. And frankly, anything that means that a rescue dog sits in a centre for a day more than it needs to, I think is not the right thing to do. The Scottish Government's currently consulting on extending out the regulations, and should I be successful with my motion today, I would say as a council we should engage with that fully and look at what the extension of those regulations allows us to do. So I have essentially said that we commit fully to engaging with the consultation and that we ask the director, sorry Gordon, to ask the government what the progress is in the consultation and try and hurry them along a little. But I really feel fundamentally that regulating owners is going to do nothing and that we really need to tackle the regulation of breeders.
Councillor Adam.
I would just formally second Lisa Marie. I think she's made it clear where we stand, you know. And I appreciate what Andy is trying to bring forward here, because it is a concern to us all, you know, with regards to the dog biting and things like that. But I think it's really important that all of us feed into the consultation, because there's elements within it, you know, like demonising the breed. I don't agree with that. So there's lots of things that we can be feeding into this. So as I say, I just don't think it's enforceable. It was actually brought in kind of Victorian Britain and was scrapped in 1987 due to only 50% uptake, and the fact that it wasn't enforceable and it was financially unfeasible given the money that had to be put in to try and chase up the percentage of people that weren't applying. So as Lisa Marie says, it's going to be responsible dog owners that are going to be hit here, because it will not make any difference to the ones that have got umpteen dogs that they don't look after currently. So
Thanks, Councillor Adam. But another couple of people went in, but this debate is actually quite interesting and throwing up a lot of facts from back in the day. I know Councillor Hood's mentioned that his father remembers when they were licensed. I don't. I remember in the 60s, the 70s. I was born in the very early 60s. What we don't have now, and we used to have then, were loads of strays. And I remember we used to just pick up dogs in the street and take them home and say to our dad, "Can we keep this dog?" You know, and which thereafter became known as the Doig. That was it. The dog, it didn't even have a name. It was called the Doig. So things have changed so much, but there will be people here who can resonate with that and remember it. I think Sam's one of them. I can see him nodding his head. So yeah, so things have improved in that sense. Okay, Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yep, as you say, it's good to have this discussion of this motion before us today. As we all probably know, that the UK government is currently looking to amend the Dangerous Dogs Act to take account of the Bully XL and other dangerous breeds. The motion I particularly like at the bottom here, preventing unethical dog breeding, and in particular increase owner education. Be keen to hear how such a license might achieve this. But it's certainly something that needs to be looked at. I know in Switzerland they've had dog training lessons, but I think they were discontinued in 2016. But it's certainly something that owners need to be aware of and take heed of. So it's important that such a license as this doesn't become just another tax like the garden tax. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I'll be brief. I really just want to lend my support verbally to this motion. I welcome it, and I have always been a keen advocate of the reinstatement of the dog licence, and the reason for that is because I am an animal lover. I'm sure everybody in this chamber finds the neglect of and cruelty towards animals offensive and dismaying. Ditto irresponsible ownership. And so I think that's really the spirit of Councillor Doig's motion. I will acknowledge that there is difficulty in policing such a thing as a dog licence. It can be complex, it can be resource heavy. But I also think that because it's difficult to police doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't. I think with political will, you can police any act of legislation. For example, another license, the TV license, is very enforceable. It just depends on whether you have the will or the resources to do that. I also think that governments, that's national, devolved and local, have to do whatever they can. I see this as a step in the right direction for that. And I can't help, as a thought experiment, wondering if this license had been perhaps in place a few years ago, if we would have actually experienced to the same levels the upsetting and catastrophic impact of the pandemic puppies, which was underreported, but we're all quite well aware of now. So I would just like to confirm that I will be supporting this motion, and I commend Councillor Doig for bringing it to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian Graham.
Thank you, Provost. I just wanted to say about the actual licence itself. I think what we were suggesting or we discussed was, and I know it's not in the motion, was about microchipping. So the whole point about microchipping is if you buy from a breeder, the breeder pays for the microchip and that's your licence. If you get a dog from the Dogs Trust or any kind of rescue centre, they microchip the dog. So really, there's no huge additional on cost to the dog owners. It's at source, and a lot of people will benefit from dog insurance because if you microchip your dog, the insurance costs come down. So I think that's probably how we thought it could work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Graham. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Hughes? No? Okay, Councillor Andy Doig, to sum up.
I think this has been a really productive and positive debate, Provost. I really do. It's been a great debate, but there are differences of opinion. Councillor Hughes, I would never dream of shouting at any elected member, never mind your good self, but we did have a disagreement about this issue. I'm surprised. I think it's all about the mandatory element that we disagree, and I really do think if you're going to tackle the whole range of mad dog behaviours, and that includes responsible owners who maybe have got issues with dogs and just need that extra bit of support with it, and that's one of the ways that a dog licence could raise revenue for local government in order to allow the councils to put money back into that kind of support. That's what I think mandatory dog licensing would do. I'm a wee bit aghast, if not surprised. The flag of deregulation appears to have been raised, not in the blue corner of the chamber, but in the black and yellow corner, because I do think the mandatory element is really quite important. I think Councillor Leishman's actually picked up on this point. The fact that bad owners may try and evade this dog licence is not a reason for not doing it. That's not really a valid argument, because there's many features of assets and facets of things in society that we struggle to get people to do, but we feel it's in the common good and the national interest that they do it. And if we're going to tackle the situation in relation to dangerous dogs, then I think we need to do it. As a community and as a country, we need to really tackle that. Now, Councillor Gillian Graham made some very good points, I think, about microchipping. I mean, maybe every dog should have a QR code. Now, in some jurisdictions, and again, I just say to Councillor Hughes, she's assumed that the motion means that it's the dog owner that would be licensed. Some jurisdictions, it's the dog alone that's licensed, and you could possibly do that using IT in the microchip system. There's a lot of ways we can do. Things have changed an awful lot in society since 1987, so there's a lot of things we could do to improve that situation. Now, finally, Provost, in relation to the question of cost, the German scheme, the dog licence in Germany, the Hundestour, as they call it, it would cost the equivalent here of £2.16 a week. Now, that's only a quarter of the cost of a 12-pack Tesco adult dog mix selection at £9. If you can feed a dog, you can licence it as well. And I think that's a really important point. It's not a right, it's a privilege to own a dog, and it's a responsibility. And owners need to do that. Thanks.
My dog gets better food than that. Just saying. Okay, we'll go to the vote then.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion by Councillor Andy Doig, seconded by Councillor Hood, which has been further amended by the amendment from Councillor Montgomery and Councillor Gillian Graham. And we have an amendment from Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Adam. Can members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor Andy Doig's motion or Councillor Hughes' amendment? Councillor Adam.
Amendment.
Councillor Edley Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ann Dowling.
Motion.
Councillor Burns.
Amendment.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Amendment.
Provost Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Need to stop. I told you it was going to be one of the days.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're all right again.
Okay. Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilmour.
Motion.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray.
Motion.
Councillor Hood,
Motion.
Councillor Hughes,
Amendment.
Councillor Innes,
Amendment.
Councillor Leishman,
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane,
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McClaren,
Amendment.
Councillor Mags McClaren,
Amendment.
Councillor James McClaren, Councillor McCulloch,
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald,
Motion.
Councillor McEwen, Councillor McGonigal,
Motion.
Councillor McGuire, Councillor McGuire,
Amendment.
Councillor McMillan,
Motion.
Councillor McNaughton,
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Milet,
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson,
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson,
Amendment.
Councillor Roden,
Amendment.
Councillor Shaw,
Amendment.
Councillor Smith,
Motion.
Councillor Steele,
Amendment.
Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion. We have 21 for the motion and 21 for the amendment, and therefore it goes to the lowest.
Come on. This is the first time this has happened. I'm going to vote for the second amendment.
We now have 21 for the motion, 22 for the amendment. The amendment's carried.
Okay, item 11 on the agenda is motion 3, Lochwinnoch Arts Festival. In addition to this motion, I have also been approached by Councillor Gillian Graham and Councillor Emma Rodden to request civic hospitality to help Lochwinnoch Arts Festival celebrate its 20th anniversary. So just to let you both know that I will get in touch with Maura Stow to discuss this and to see if they want it or not. We can't force it upon them, but if they do, we'll put that in place. But we also have an amendment from Emma Rodden and Councillor Doig circulated. Give you a wee minute to look at that. Okay, Gillian, have you had time to read that amendment?
Yep. I don't really have any objection. It just kind of looks stuck on, to be honest. I don't quite see what it brings to the motion, but it's not a contentious motion. So if people want to, if Councillor Doig and Emma, Councillor Rodden want to add that, I've got no issue with it.
Okay. And you want to second it, Councillor Gilmour?
Happy to second, Provost.
Okay. I'll bring in Councillor Rodden then, Jill, to speak to their amendment just now. Andy, sorry.
Okay.
Andy Doig.
No, thanks, Provost. I thank Councillor Gillian Graham for accepting the amendment. The reason we wanted to bring this forward, and it predates actually, Provost, goes back to the time when Councillor Gilmour and Derek Bibby and myself were the three board councillors. The old Jobs and Economy Board in 2015, after Paisley had failed to get the City of Culture bid, which we're all disappointed about, there was a debate at the Jobs and Economy Board, which at the time was convened by the former councillor Roy Glenn, and I'd put up an SNP amendment. There was a discussion that we should allow other places in Renfrewshire, villages, to designate themselves as villages of heritage and culture. So I put up an amendment at the time in the name of the SNP, which Roy Glenn and administration accepted. So that's the kind of context, Councillor Graham, to the background. I think it's time to reiterate that. really because we've not just got the Arts Festival, and I've known Morag Thow for the last 11 years. She's really is a force of nature. There's a tremendous amount along with her volunteers. In recent years, you've had, since COVID, you've had the Lochwinnoch Feel Good Festival, and I've noticed that that's involving people like Alan Bissett, the playwright and poet who lives in Lochwinnoch, and they're starting to dovetail their activities along with the Arts Festival events. And it's good to see the Arts Festival is about, I think, the biggest community arts festival in the whole of Renfrewshire. And I think it's important to look at what they've brought, not just to Lochwinnoch, but in fact to Renfrewshire as a whole. I'll give you an example. Just after COVID, the Scottish Government had a scheme to help struggling musicians. Obviously, performers and musicians couldn't perform. The Arts Festival couldn't meet. To get things back on track and to get the event back on its feet, Morag Thow and her team applied to get this grant from the Scottish Government, which allowed subsidised performers to take them on Scotland-wide tours. And so the Morag and the Arts Festival team did this with a vengeance, and it really was excellent. It allowed performers to get back out there. It promoted music and culture in our communities, and it helped the Arts Festival as well. So I think really it's just an excellent event. It's good to see Lochwinnoch is a very vibrant community. But I have to say too, Kilbarchan is as well, and it's got a great amount of history and heritage, and that's a subject that Councillor Gillian, Graham and I are very much on the same page about in terms of the history and heritage of Kilbarchan. So it was intended and is intended in the best possible spirit. Thanks.
Just formally second. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Emma. Okay, Gillian, are you a wee bit clearer now after
Yes,
that explanation?
Absolutely. I'm happy. I haven't even spoken to the motion. I don't know if you want me to speak to the motion, but no, we're very much in agreement, Councillor Doig and myself. And I think, is it okay if I speak to the motion,
Yes.
Provost? Is that all right? It's just to kind of say that, I mean, the Arts Festival started in 2003 as a kind of in humble beginnings. I understood it was just a one-day book festival at the time. And then what's happened is more and more arts organisations have asked to take part in it, and it grew to a weekend event, and now it's a multi-weekend programme. And Councillor Doig's absolutely right. It now connects with the Feel Good Festival. I think what's really remarkable about it is it is truly community driven, and it offers a varied and inclusive programme of arts for all ages. And it doesn't just invite nationally known artists, but also local artists and musicians. And it's a substantial community, not just in Lochwinnoch, but out into Kilbarchan and across the nearby villages. And during COVID, they actually did an online festival, so they were able to provide live events but online, and they also work with Paley Food Festival. And as part of the regional Screen Scotland, they've also held public screenings of Scottish films such as The Angel's Share and Local Hero, and linking that with whisky tasting. And as Andy was saying there, all credit to the Scottish Government. They set aside £750,000 as a result of COVID. They created a thing called Scotland on Tour, and that was to try and support live musicians, because obviously they lost out during COVID. Lots of concerts were cancelled, and it's a bit of a hand-to-mouth existence for many of them. And as a result, Lochwinnoch Arts Festival fed into that, received funding, and have been able to bring out internationally and nationally award-winning musicians to perform in Lochwinnoch for the local community and for the wider community. Over the last 3 years, they've also introduced workshops and come and try events to encourage people to engage with different forms of the arts. Now, none of this would be possible without the dedication of Morag Thow and their team of festival volunteers. Everyone involved in running Lochwinnoch Arts Festival gives us the time freely. To do it for 12 months is impressive enough, but to do it for 20 years is something which I think we would all want to congratulate them on. And I feel we should offer the congratulations and thanks to all involved in Lochwinnoch Arts Festival for their generous dedication and contribution to cultural and community life. Thank you very much, Provost.
Thank you very much, Jill. Okay, so that is agreed, and we will contact Morag Thow in relation to offering civic hospitality. Okay, motion 4, item 12 on the agenda. It's Councillors McMillan and McGuire. Got an amendment from Councillor Neil Graham and Councillor Leishman. The SNP group have indicated that they'll support this motion. Okay. Ian, do you want to
Okay.
to your motion?
Thanks very much. I'm glad to hear the SNP group are supporting that, and that's greatly appreciated. Skin cancer, as we know, can be deadly. If it's caught early enough, it can very much treatable. Something like 12,000 people a year are diagnosed with non-melanoma skin cancer, and 1,200 have malignant every year. It's the 5th most common cancer in the UK, and 46 people, what a remarkable figure, 46 people every day are diagnosed with this. And 80% of skin cancers are preventable, and very much part of that prevention is the use of sunscreen. It seems dead obvious nowadays, but as a child of the late 60s and 70s, it wasn't really a thing you done, just put on sunscreen. It was get out there and get the sun about you, you'll be fine. And you used to come in at night and you'd be red raw, and your mother would say to you, "You're looking great, son." Now, I might look great, but I feel terrible. And you know, some people in here might know, a long time ago, I developed malignant melanoma myself, and thankfully I'm still here to tell the story. But unfortunately, a lot of people of my age group are no longer here, and a lot of people in here relate a lot of things to football, and we know that the late Celtic player Tommy Burns, he passed away at a very young age because of skin cancer, and I'm sure he had the same experience as myself growing up. Sunscreen just was not an option. Nowadays you see it an awful lot more, and you see it in the beaches, or you see it abroad, or even just along at the park, at Barshaw, whatever. Kids are getting sunscreen put on them, so I think that's great. I think we've moved a long way in the use of sunscreen. But I was listening to a debate during the summer, and it was talking about the nurseries, and that's great. You know, that it gets used in nurseries, and we all know that kids in nurseries are out and about an awful lot, so they should be. But that got me thinking, well, I wonder if that progresses on to primary schools, because obviously there's not much an age gap between nursery and primary school. So I found out through the education department, no, we don't. We don't do it as a matter of course. So that's the reason why I've put this forward. And I think if you're in nursery school, yeah, you maybe learn a wee bit about sun cream, but you probably don't quite understand what's going on. And I think once you get into primary school, you especially get a wee bit older, into the 7 or 8 year olds, they'll probably understand why, and they might well take that habit of using sunscreen into later life. So it's all, to me, it's partly about education. Sun cream is for life. It's not just as if you go on holiday, or you know, there's certainly advice to put it on every single day. And that might be too far for some people, but that's a general advice, is to wear it every single day. And of course, there's affordability of it as well. I'm quite sure it's maybe not top of people's priorities when summer months come round again to get sun cream. So I think it being part of the school's education, I think it could be taken into later life, and it might be a wee bit of change of culture, particularly for men who are a bit reluctant to be putting on sun cream. I think men are a bit slow to react to these sorts of things. Not everybody, but just generally speaking. So to me, it's about education for our young kids to maybe take it into later life, and it's also about the affordability. And I think if we do save some lives, absolutely fantastic. And a lot of these skin cancers, I know that the skin cancer I had started off when I was a youngster, and it didn't develop until I was in my early 30s or my mid 30s, you know. And if I had sunscreen round about in the days, maybe I wouldn't have had to go up to the hospital. And I'll tell you something, when you go up to that hospital, in those days it was Cannisburn Hospital, it's absolutely horrific, some of the things that people have to go through. And I certainly remember sitting in a room, and the person next to me was told they only had months to live. And when you hear that sort of thing, it's quite harrowing, to be perfectly honest with you. So absolutely delighted the SNP group are supporting this, and as they, you know, I don't expect this to happen tomorrow, and we just appointed a new director of children's services yesterday, so I'm not entirely sure when she will be starting, but I dare say that other staff can take up the mantle until she comes to Renfrewshire, and we can bring back a report, you know, to see how practically it's going to work, and obviously there will be cost implications as well. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think, yeah, it won't happen right away. As you know, we will need to know the ins and outs of putting this in place. But, you know, there are other problems like, you know, how do the children get the sun cream? Do they put it on themselves? Does somebody else put it on them? And parents will have questions about all of that too. So, but I don't think it's anything that can't be ironed out. And I think that was the general opinion of the SNP group too. Okay, so your seconder is Jamie McGuire.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Provost. Totally reiterate what Councillor McMillan was saying. Don't know if there's something up with that speaker. Obviously, I don't know what things were like in the 1960s, but obviously, no, obviously, I can't relate on that part. But I can obviously resonate that it's a serious issue present. Implementing a council policy to provide pupils in primary schools with sun cream can be highly beneficial for their health. Sunscreen is a crucial tool in protecting young children from the harmful effects of ultraviolet radiation from the sun, and its provisions can contribute to a safer and healthy educational environment. And there's, you know, several key reasons why this policy would be advantageous. First of all, skin cancer prevention. So the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Dermatology emphasise the prolonged exposure to UV radiation as a primary risk factor for skin cancer. Providing sunscreen to primary school pupils helps protect their skin from obviously UV damage, reducing the long-term effects of skin cancer. There's also the vulnerability that children have to UV light. Children's skin is more sensitive and susceptible to sunburn than adults. Now, the Skin Cancer Foundation notes that blistering sunburns in childhood can increase the risk of skin cancer later in life. So, sunscreen application during school hours can really help, you know, the issues in later life. There's also the UV index variability. So the UV index varies throughout the year and by, you know, geographical location, but the provision of sunscreen ensures that pupils are protected on sunny days when UV radiation levels are high. And, you know, on days that it's raining, it's cloudy, you know, the UV index might be moderate, which the World Health Organization recommend that sunscreen should be worn. I've actually got factor 50 with me right now because you never know what kind of day it's going to be like. If you actually go on the weather app, it'll actually tell you UV index and it'll tell you every day, moderate or above, get your sun cream on. And last of all, you know, parental support. Parents may not always remember to apply sunscreen to their children before school. They've got busy lives. They might just forget about it. It's not the parents' fault. They've just forgot. And offering at school can help to be seen as a supportive measure by parents, you know, for parents who may be juggling, you know, the busy morning routines that everyone has to endure. So a council policy to provide pupils in primary schools with sunscreen is a proactive step towards safeguarding their health and well-being by adhering to the guidelines set by reputable organisations like the WHO and the American Academy of Dermatology. Schools can play a vital role in reducing the risk of skin cancer, educating young minds about sun safety, and ensuring that all pupils, regardless of their circumstances, have access to essential sun protection. This policy not only fosters a safer learning environment, but also promotes a healthier future for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGuire. We have an amendment from Councillor Graham and seconded by Councillor Leishman. Has it been sent? Yeah, it's been sent. Councillor Graham?
Thanks, Provost. The Conservative too are also, the Conservative group is also supportive of this. And I think we're not too far apart. And I think Councillor McMillan has said in his motion as well that they'll bring back a report. We just feel that we've got this round the wrong way. We're not against this motion. We simply believe, instead of agreeing today that this new policy, that officers look into the viability of the new policy and to address concerns raised, so councillors in full receipt of the facts before a decision is made. We're getting into winter now, so I think we can afford to wait until the new year to get this right. Nobody's disagreeing with the benefits of sunscreen can bring to both children and adults. Whilst I agree this is something as a council we can look into, I have various questions and concerns regarding the policy that I would like to see addressed before a decision is taken. Councillor McGuire mentioned parental support, and I'm glad that he brought that up. The first thing is parental consent for the use of sun cream, and this is something that parents would have to agree to opt in or out for their children to have sunscreen given to them by council staff. Sun cream contains many chemicals which only a parent or guardian or carer of a child can consent to being given. At this point, I don't know what the policy is, and maybe someone from education can let me know. Also, who applies the sunscreen to the child? Many primary-aged children will not be able to do this on their own. Will the sun cream be that of a spray that can be easily sprayed onto the child without teachers having to apply it? Also, the unions, have they been informed of the potential new policy? And if not, should they be consulted as part of the officer's report to confirm that teachers and school staff are comfortable with this arrangement? It might be something that they have done. If sun cream is applied to the child and the child still gets sunburn, does that open up the council to liability and possible legal action? And these are just questions that I would like to see in the report. It might not be a particular my opinion of this. It goes on. What is the current policy of schools when the weather is very warm outside? Is there a policy similar to that when it's raining, that pupils could stay indoors? Do we need more shaded areas within the playgrounds and canopies? This is something that could be looked into when designing new playgrounds and incorporating them into existing ones. Many playground surfaces have asphalt, which radiate heat. Should we look at different surfaces? Also allowing children to wear hats in the playground to shade their faces in the sun. Again, is that a current policy that we have, that the kids are allowed hats in the playground? I just believe that correct procedures should be followed. Councillors today should ask officers to go and look at how this policy could be implemented and take note of all the questions and concerns raised today and bring back a full report, including costings, first to debated and voted upon to the appropriate board, which is probably Education Board, than making a decision today on it. Thank you. So I don't think we're too far apart. We're not disagreeing with Councillor McMillan and McGuire that this is needed. We just want the information from the officers at the board and then to approve it, rather than approving it today and then get the report later after we've agreed to it. Thank you.
Okay. Obviously, Councillor McMillan will address most of the points in his summing up, but just to point out that children are encouraged to wear head protection in schools if their parents wish them to, and if they wish to, and also that the practice of supplying sun cream is already carried out in nurseries. So I think the unions would have already been consulted about that.
So the teachers might feel put them in a position if a child comes up to them and say, "Here, can you put sun cream on me?" and they might feel uncomfortable with it. And it's just to see if the teachers, and again, that could all be covered in the report. And you know, there's no problem. I'm quite sure that that it would get approved. It's just to get the answers to the questions first to then approve.
Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I'll formally second the motion, and I've nothing to add. I think Councillor Graham covered everything.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Provost. I would just like to echo the sentiments of my Labour colleagues over there. Obviously, as Ian said, 80% is actually preventable. I lost my own mother with skin cancer. And what always sticks in my mind is actually her saying, was living abroad that done this, and the doctor said, no, it could be a scalp to Ayr Beach when you're a kid. So I think really it's a education and changing perspective. Yes, you should be using the UV. I heard Jamie saying in a rainy day, we should be putting factors on every day, regardless of the weather. So we have to get into that mindset, and so therefore I'll absolutely be supporting the Labour motion.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. I know that's hard for you, and that's just an example of how things like that can affect families, and yet you're a child and you don't even know what's going to happen to you later on in life. So thank you for that, Jenny. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Provost. First of all, I absolutely support this motion, without a doubt. But Councillor McMillan, you mentioned a really important fact when you spoke about affordability. And I'm always surprised at the cost of sun cream. And I'm thinking about families in general. I know I've been in a situation in the past, and could be again, when I look and think, I can't afford that. So I think it's something that is going to have to come back and discussed at another time. I think we need to look more into that, the availability and the cost, because we are in a warmer climate. We have to start thinking that way, so cost of living, everything. So yes, I absolutely support this motion, and you were right to bring up the cost of it, Ian. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Graham. Gillian Graham.
Thanks, Provost. Just to pick up on what the other Councillor Graham, what Neil Graham was saying there, this motion, it isn't compulsory. With children aren't going to arrive at primary school and suddenly have to wear beekeepers' hats and compulsory suntan lotion when they arrive. This is about taking a policy that exists in pre-5s and then taking it into primary school. And my understanding is that it's always at the parent's discretion. So when no child goes into nursery school and has sunscreen applied unless the parents agree with it. And some children will have their own sunscreen as well. And I think anecdotally it already happens in some primary schools. I know it does in other local authorities where that school has a permission from the parent. I think what Councillor McMillan and Councillor McGuire's motion is about is taking good practice and taking it into the primary schools. And we're asking the director to come back and say, how can we apply that policy? How operationally will it work? And I fully support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. Just on the comments that have been made in relation to price, the SNP MP Amy Callaghan has a campaign running at the moment in terms of making sunscreen VAT free. And I think it's really important and part of this conversation that obviously I appreciate that that's for the UK Parliament's consideration. However, as a council, given the type of discussion, and I'm not hearing anything contrary to that, that is something that if we're talking about price, that is something that can be done significantly by our parliamentarians in that setting. And that might be a discussion for another day, but just in terms of the spirit of this conversation, on a personal level, I absolutely commend and support the work that's been done by Amy Callaghan, and I hope that all political parties will get behind the campaign to make sunscreen VAT free. Thank you.
Well, you know, this is a really important issue. This is about saving lives. It really is. I know we're sitting talking about sun cream, but it is about saving lives later on. And I don't know if we would be able to add to that motion asking our MPs to support children by reducing the VAT or taking away the VAT. I think that would be necessary, no?
I'd be more than happy. I'm certainly aware of the campaign, and if there's a line can be added in,
just supporting the campaign,
to supporting It could just be something simple, and council supports the current campaign to take away VAT from sun cream. I don't know if that's worded properly, but something along those lines. I'd be more than happy to either push that myself or accept if Michelle's putting it forward. Fine.
Can I put that through as a verbal amendment then, please? And I'm happy if
I'll
someone
second that.
there we go. Councillor
Addition.
Adam will second that if that suits.
Addition to the.
In addition.
Yeah.
In addition, yes, thank you.
We okay with the form of words?
You want to come in, Mark?
Thank you, Provost. I'm noting the wording as being council supports the current campaign to make sunscreen VAT free.
Yeah, is everybody okay with that? Yeah, and I realise that we've still got the amendment, so we need to vote. Do you want to come in and sum up, Ian? You've already spoken to your amendment.
I'm happy to withdraw it because we're all on the same page on this. I just had various concerns, and just the way that it's, you know, that we get the answers. But if we're getting answers, if there is something coming back to the board in the future, we're all on the same page on that. So
Well,
that's.
make that happen. We can bring it back to the board.
Yeah, so I'm quite happy just to, so there's no vote.
Okay, then that's good. And you're also happy with the addition?
Yep, happy with that.
Asking MPs to support the
Yeah,
VAT removal. Okay, then. So thank you, everyone. That's a very good outcome for this council today. Thank you. Okay, we are on item 13. That's motion 5, and that's on Councillors McMillan and Jill Graham. We have an amendment to that from Councillors Campbell and Burns. Councillor McMillan, is it sent? Is the amendment sent? Okay. Ian, I'll give you a wee minute to have a look at the amendment if you want.
Well, I had put down the Director of Children's Services just simply because they look after schools, but I get the point. It should be the infrastructure. My apologies for maybe not being up to date with all the different roles and responsibilities. It's essentially the actual amendment is basically saying, you know, they're open to 7 o'clock and things like that, which is a fact, I suppose. And it's also asking for a report to come back. So in essence, I'm more than happy with it to accept that. But I would still like to speak to.
Sure.
Because I suppose I have covered myself by saying the findings to be reported back to the appropriate board. And a real mistake has just been asking the Director of Children's Services. So a lesson learnt. Every day's a school day.
Well, obviously there are other independent councillors here in the Conservative group. You'll need to speak to your.
Yeah, I'll speak
your
to.
motion.
I'll speak to.
You've not decided yet.
To say I'm quite happy to accept that, but the thinking behind it was, and I know that some schools are open to later on. Not all of them are open, but all the time. But I think we should be maybe certainly putting it out there that the schools are available. I know there's a number of groups in Renfrewshire always look about for places to have their meetings, to have their activities, and sometimes the last place they think of is a school. But yet some communities have schools, you know, that they're everywhere. You know, some wards have got 6 and 7 schools, all easily to get to. And I know certainly in my area, some groups are trying to build new community facilities, but yet there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools within half a mile. So are we doing enough to, advertise the fact that the schools are available? And I know there's slight complications with some of the schools that are, as Councillor Nicholson reminded us earlier on, our PFI schools. And I know, and again, in my own community, that doesn't seem to be a bar to get into the schools. I know, particularly in Corsford, Ford Bank Primary School is well used by the community. At the weekends as well, I'm not, as I say, I've quickly read your amendment. I'm not entirely sure if it mentions much about the weekends, but you're talking about 2 full days where possibly schools are lying empty, gym facilities, other sports facilities. Now I know people don't tend to meet on a weekend, but there's pitches there as well. Some of the pitches that could be utilised better. Football teams are always struggling to get pitches. So I think we could do better. And again, the amendment has actually said we'll bring back a further report. So basically, all I want to do is we'll get these massive assets for a lot of times they're lying empty. Let's make full use of them. And there is also a revenue side to it as well. Now, that wasn't my motivator in this particular motion to raise money for the council, but there is a side issue that if they are used, they will come at a cost. I'm not saying give them away to people for nothing. There will be a cost there. And so that could be a revenue raising issue as well. So I say I'm more than happy to accept that. And if the findings are brought back to the other board, absolutely fine with that.
Okay, Councillor Graham.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, to kind of back up what Councillor McMillan's saying. I mean, the schools are very valuable, publicly owned, community-based assets, and if you factor in holidays, October week, the summer holidays, etc., that's 20% of the year they lie empty, unless they are really local communities encouraged to engage with it. So to have a valuable asset like that lying empty for a fifth of the year seems to me to be a lost opportunity. And I think particularly given the cost of living pressures and the alarming levels of mental health issues amongst our young people, we should be making use of our schools to try and engage young people during the summer holidays in sports, arts activities. Similarly, it can be used by older people. It seems it's a West of Scotland thing that the schools are seen to be sacrosanct and not as a community asset. When I trained over in Lothian and in Mid Lothian, and there they have community high schools where you have adults coming to the schools. The schools are constantly seen as being a community facility, not at something at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, the gate shuts and that's it. So I think what we want to try is realise what great resources we have available and how can we make the best use of them. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, Councillor McLaren, did you have your hand up for this?
Yes.
Oh, I'll bring you in after I bring in the amendment. Okay,
thank you.
I just wondered if it was from the last time. So we have an amendment from Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. I'm glad that Councillor McMillan is taking the amendment in the spirit that was intended. It was to complement the motions and sentiment. It was just to clean up some lines, just to make sure that it would have that clarity attached to it. The points that are made about community assets, I think that we've obviously had many discussions. We've had some this morning already in relation to the position that councils are in. Some of the actions that the council is already taking, but where we are forced to look at things, it also affords opportunity. And I like to think as an administration, we've always looked at it with a glass half full to see how can we modernise and make sure that our offerings meet a modernised society and our modern communities as well. I'm not taking away from the offerings that council facilities in the way that they've ran in the past. They obviously fit a purpose at that point, but I think it's always important to refresh, reflect and decide if we are best serving our community with these things. So hopefully this review will be fruitful and allow for us to be able to do things a bit better. And I'm glad to see as a council that we're able to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burns.
Yeah, I'll firmly second Councillor Campbell. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. This motion is very welcome. We need to be making more of our facilities, make them available to children, whether it be an organised group or even individuals. Where there is vandalism, as I've already mentioned earlier, we need to be creating more activity, not locking it away like we do our school pitches. As an example, Bishopton Girls Academy is 2 years old and have managed to grow to around 100 girls playing football and hopes to grow further this year, but have nowhere to train. They have no suitable lets to train on locally or even in Renfrewshire as a whole. I note the amendment before us talks about all primary schools are open until at least 7 p.m. But Bishopton, it doesn't have the Newton Road Park. However, this single pitch is only allowed for official games. No training can take place, and it can't be used 6 months of the year in the evening due to lack of floodlights. It's unsuitable to be used for 4 of those due to being waterlogged. This leaves them, the Bishopton Girls Academy, with 6 spring summer months where again the park is deemed out of action in June and July to allow for reseeding and growth. Recently, the additional 4G Astro pitch, which was installed at Park Mains High School, they had high hopes that this would meet demand, but all they've been able to get is 2 hours on a Thursday evening. This is completely insufficient for the 80 girls that train on a Thursday. We should be helping grow women's football. Basically, the growth in girls' football means that the number of football parks need to double. It's a big ask, but it needs to be done. If the AstroTurf at St John's Bosco and Bargaran Primary School was made available, which it isn't at the moment, instead of being off limits, then this would be a big help. At a time when facilities are scarce and council budgets are tight, it seems strange that the council wouldn't welcome the additional revenue for pitch hire. So I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, so we are agreeing motion 5 as amended by councillor Campbell. Yeah, okay, agreed. Motion 6, item 14, we have councillors James McLaren and Leishman. Any amendments from them?
We do, yes.
Okay, we have an amendment to this one too. Okay, we have 2 amendments to this. One from the Labour group and one from the SNP group. They're being sent to you just now, councillor McLaren. I'll give you a wee minute to have a read.
First amendment.
Provost, I haven't received that amendment.
Second one's just been sent. It was only just submitted. So it's been sent to you now. That was from councillor Gilmour and McDonald's. Have you received 2? You've received 1. Okay, give me a little moment, please. You should have received 1 from councillor Gilmour and another one from councillor Campbell. Okay, that should be on its way to you. Okay. Whenever you're ready, councillor McLaren, you can start speaking to your motion.
Provost, the two amendments, I'm happy to accept them as an addition to my motion.
Yeah, you happy with that? Councillor Gilmour? Yeah. Councillor Campbell? You want to come in?
I just have a slight reservation about the way that the motion's worded, Provost. The reason I submitted the amendment, I'm not speaking to it at this moment, but it's just to make it clear to yourself, is that it makes some very generalised commentary about community safety, and I just feel like this sort of tightens it to make it very clear. Like I said, some of it is commentary in the motion that is presented to the council, rather than actually stating for a fact. Like I'm saying, street lighting is important to community safety, but I know I'm straying into it, but I just have a slight concern.
Can I just ask, was your motion intended as a replacement, an amendment?
I was hoping that it would be accepted as a replacement because it keeps the sentiment of what the movers are wanting to be done. I have no objection if that was accepted as a replacement with the Labour amendment as well, in part with our motion, our amendment. So if the SNP amendment was to be accepted as a replacement to the original motion with the addition of the Labour amendment, I think that would be reasonable in my
I'm
suggestion.
going to bring in Mark at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor McLaren, we need to ask you.
Sorry, can Councillor McLaren confirm whether he's prepared to accept Councillor Campbell's amendment with the Labour amendment added to it, or would you still wish to continue with your motion?
I'm happy to accept the amendments as addition, not as a replacement.
Right. On that basis, we will then require to go to a vote once the debate has been conducted. And if I'm understanding the position correctly, what we would be voting on would be Councillor James McLaren's motion with the Labour amendment attached to that as an addition, going against a vote against Councillor Campbell's amendment with the Labour amendment attached.
Are you all clear?
Okay, I'll try again. I think
Can you all listen carefully, please?
I think effectively what is happening is that the chamber has agreed that the Labour amendment will be included in whatever motion is passed. So effectively, we will have Councillor James McLaren's motion with the Labour paragraph added at the end, going against the vote against Councillor Campbell's amendment with the Labour amendment at the end.
I think that depends on what the Labour group and Councillor Gilmour wants, as whether he wants an amendment to be attached to both motion and amendment.
Chris?
Thank you, Provost. I think looking at the motion and the language of the motion and Councillor Cameron's amendment, which is more detailed, I would be minded to attach the Labour amendment onto the
Michelle Campbell's
amendment. It's simply the language is better. It clarifies a lot of issues.
Okay.
Nothing. Sorry, James, it was a bit woolly. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, right. This is the last time we're going to repeat this. Mark.
Okay, so based on that, members, we have Councillor James McLaren's motion, which would be standalone, and Councillor Campbell's amendment, which now has Councillor Gilmour's amendment attached to it as an addition.
Okay. Councillor McLaren.
Right. Thank you, Provost. So the motion reads, Council recalls that since before COVID-19 pandemic, many streetlights across Renfrewshire have been removed. and this has led to many parts of our communities being inadvertently lit after dusk. Council acknowledges that the poor street lighting during the hours of darkness leads to increased risk of violent crime, burglary, road traffic accidents, tripping hazards, etc. Now that the nights are already longer than day and daylight saving is only a little over 4 weeks away, this has become a very pressing concern for many of our citizens. Council agrees to explore and identify measures to correct the inadequate street lighting and implement those measures as a matter of urgency. So as the nights are getting darker, I'm sure everyone agrees that street lighting is necessary for our residents to feel safe at night. Many lampposts were cut down 2 years ago or more due to corrosion, and some cut down lampposts are across from or next to each other. This is the case in many of our communities. I understand that currently the 8 or 10 metre high lighting columns required to be installed by a contractor, and Council has not employed a contractor for this since before COVID due to budget constraints. This is evident in much of Bishopton and Langbank, and have a long list of streets with this lighting problem. I'm not going to bore you with the list, of course. I understand that street lighting has recently been moved to the road section, so I hope we will see some action. But as I understand it, Council can install 5 and 6 metre high columns in-house and may buy in these 5 and 6 metre columns to replace columns where 2 or more have been cut down in close proximity to each other. I'm not sure how this would look or if it would only be a temporary measure, but at least it is being considered. So I urge the department to move swiftly on fixing the street lighting problem and hope that you will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I'll just formally second Councillor McLaren's motion. I won't speak on it because if my understanding is correct, I think the result might be the same either way. So thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure who to ask next. Councillor Campbell or Councillor Gilmour? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Provost, and I thank Councillor Gilmour and the Labour Group for understanding what it is that I'm trying to achieve here today. It is progressive. It is to what the sentiment of what the original motion was proposing. Like I said, but it has to have the robustness attached to it in order for there to be effective action. We all have lighting columns in our wards. I'm not going to ask, please don't start giving individual accounts because we all have them, or areas that get reported as queried sort of dark spots, etc. And community safety is something that we talk on an ongoing basis and through various strands of boards. So it is important, but I think it's important that we do recognise that there has been a significant investment. And I know at that time it generated a lot of discussion and debate about that investment and how it was going to work. And the very fact that Renfrewshire was at the forefront of saying, right, we're going to do this, and it's been recognised on that national and local level, and other councils look to the way that we've done street lighting, because there's other councils out there that are still playing, they're still chasing it up. So the very fact that we can be at a point where we're looking at the effectiveness and having a review of that, like to see what it's doing, I think it's a really, really positive step in the right direction. So that's all I have to say on that, and I thanks for the support across the chamber. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gilmour, do you like to?
Thank you, Provost. I'll be very, very brief. Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for your motion. It's actually nice to be acknowledged. It was actually under the last Labour administration, 2012-2017, that we brought the street lighting in because of the environmental benefits to the community, and there was a bit of pushback at the time. But the fact is, I think it's proved over the years that it probably was the right decision. However, as time moves on, it's always useful to go back and review such a large project. And Councillor Campbell iterated within her motion the natural number of lighting columns we have within Renfrewshire, and some of the areas it's always better to go back to the review and say, are we doing it properly? Could we do it better? So that's why we put the motion forward today. To Councillor McLaren's point about the lighting recently been moved over from a building services to environmental. It's good to see that. I think it's a good fit. I think it will work. And you know, if I'm pretty sure that if there's a need with the resources that environmental services have and the boots on the ground, I'm pretty sure that fairly soon we'll see reports coming through, and I hope to see them go through the environmental board that contracts have been issued or bids out for contracts issued, and we should see improvements fairly soon. That's all I've got to say. The matter, Provost. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring in Councillor Devine before I... Did you have your hand up, Eddie?
But I'll say something anyway.
Oh,
I just want to thank
must have been a legacy hand. Then I'll bring in Councillor McLaren
to thank the previous councillor for accepting that it was a good idea to do this. And I have to say that Cathy, in her time as convener, actually carried it on. And we carried out, if you remember, Cathy, we carried out an investigation into it, and it came back that the lighting was perfectly okay. We did always say that we would need to look into any dark spots to see what we could do to upgrade them. And I'm glad it's coming back. Jamie's brought it, and we can obviously have a look at these things and get them sorted out. Thanks.
Thanks, Eddie. Okay, Councillor McLaren to sum up, then we'll go to the vote.
Nothing further to add, Provost.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLaren. We'll go to the votes.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion by Councillor James McLaren, seconded by Councillor Leishman, and an amendment from Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Burns, which has further been extended by the addition of a Labour amendment from Councillor Gilmour, seconded by Councillor MacDonald. Would members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor James McLaren's motion or Councillor Campbell's amendment? Councillor Adams.
Amendment.
Councillor Edley Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ann Dowling.
Amendment.
Councillor Burns. Councillor Burns.
Sorry,
Come back to
machine's got
Councillor.
their amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Amendment.
Provost Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Davidson.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilmour.
Amendment.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray. Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Amendment.
Councillor Innes.
Amendment.
Councillor Leishman.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Max McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor James McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Amendment.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen.
Amendment.
Councillor McGonigal.
Motion.
Councillor McGuire. Councillor McGurk.
Amendment.
Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Councillor McNaughton.
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Milet.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Rodden.
Amendment.
Councillor Shaw.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Steele. Councillor Steele.
Sorry, amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hannigan has voted for the amendment. We have 5 for the motion, 37 for the amendment. The amendment is carried.
Thank you. That now brings us on to item 15. Now, with 6 motions left, I think, to consider. If you talk really quickly, we could be out of here for 2 o'clock. Okay? That's a good, is that a motion, Eddie? Don't talk. Okay, item 15, motion 7, councillors Jacqueline Cameron and Jennifer Adam.
Thank you, Provost. I'm assuming there's no amendments, so I'll just say my wee spiel.
No amendments.
Right, so I'll not read out the motion considering we're running short of time. So Menopause Goals is a project with St Mirren Charitable Foundation, the SFA, menopause expert Maria Anderson and Glasgow Uni research team who will collate the data and findings from the women taking part. So football and women's inclusion in football has changed immeasurably since I was a young woman. It wasn't a place to take your daughter, or so my father tells me. But look at where we are now. Women and girls have their own teams. Women's football is piquing the interest of everyone, and attendance and viewing figures on TV is soaring. The idea that football would be home to a menopause programme would have been unthinkable at one point. This project is the first of its kind in Scotland, and I want to thank Gail Brannigan from the Foundation for continuing to be an inspiration to women and for championing women's place in football. I hear the programme's going incredibly well and that everyone is getting a lot out of it and learning from it. And our very own Provost is going to talk to the women signed up for the programme, and I'm hoping to get along to one of the sessions too. I really love the name of the programme, apart from the obvious puns. Celebrating the second half is quite a poignant title for people who are menopausal, because as a menopausal woman, you can be made to feel that you're not respected as the same way that a younger woman may be, or even a man of the same age. And even in some ways your life is over, your youth gone, and that you should be relegated to the back benches, which is a combination of a political and a football pun. So the symptoms can be confusing, debilitating, and women can be overlooked for promotion. They might find it difficult to cope in the workplace and dismissed as done. Well, programmes like this are empowering and enabling for menopausal women. And I also want to highlight the council's own Ren Talks on menopause, which I attended. It was really, really interesting and useful. And for our own HR team in implementing a council menopause policy. So all this sends a message that we might be over 50 or even over 40 in some cases, but we're not over the hill and we've got a lot to offer still. So congratulations to St Mirren Charitable Foundation and Gail Brannigan for blazing a trail in Scottish football and ensuring that the word menopause is not one to be whispered in a way it once was.
Absolutely, Jacqueline. Thank you for that. Never mind the 40s or 50s that I had. I went through menopause at a very early age at 28 because I had to have surgery. So it's not just older people who go through it and suffer the consequences. So hopefully that when I speak to them, that'll bring a kind of new perspective to it as well. But okay, your seconder, Jenny.
That's myself, Provost. And thanks for that, because you're absolutely right, because really the most important thing is opening up, having that important conversation, the open conversation about symptoms and solutions for that. So, I really welcome this programme. As Jacqueline says, Menopause Goals, the second half. As I say, it's only through breaking the silence on this subject that can really help women to empower them. As I say, it's about having the ability to have the open conversation. And we all know, what we can do, by taking a more holistic approach. We speak about it all the time. We talk about diet, nutrition, but it's worth remembering the real nutrition isn't just the food. It's actually the things that actually impact our lives the most are the things that aren't in our plate. So that's, you're looking at your sleep, your mindfulness, your meditation, your relationships, your joy, your career, your home, your health and your environment. So I welcome this shifting culture and I look forward to hearing the good results of the women taking back control. So well done, St Mirren Charitable Foundation.
Yep. Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Alison?
Thank you. I would like to congratulate Councillors Cameron and Adam for bringing this motion. Really support it. And it's very refreshing to be able to have a conversation around the issue of menopause where it's not couched in kind of double entendres and still that awkwardness around a topic or an issue that affects over half of the human population. Most women will go through menopause at some point, so I fully support it. And the underlying principle that women who are in the prime of their life.
Amen.
Thank you. I think we demonstrate that every time we get together in here. I'm just saying. The prime of their life are not in any way to be cast off as somebody that's yesterday's women. We're very much today's women, tomorrow's women, and I fully support this motion. Thanks for bringing it.
Thank you very much for your comments, Alison. Okay, we agree the motion? Yep, thank you. Okay, next motion is motion 8, item 16, and that's councillors Jacqueline Cameron and Lisa Marie Hughes, and we now have two amendments.
Councillor Leishman and Neil Graham.
Councillor Leishman and Neil Graham.
Councillor McMillan.
Councillor McMillan and Councillor Davidson. Are they both sent? You sending them just now, Dale? Okay. Give you a wee minute to look at them. Councillor Cameron, you're welcome to start speaking to your motion when you've considered the amendments.
Sorry, Provost. Sorry, Provost. I'm just mulling over them. I'm still reading the second one. Yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to see whether I'm accepting or not? Or
you can if you want.
Yeah. Well, obviously I'll be rejecting the Conservative amendment. I'll accept the Labour amendment. And I'll just start talking to the motion. So events have obviously moved on since I submitted the motion, and I'm glad to see that Alistair Jack has agreed that the pilot won't be blocked by the UK government. And this week the IGB agreed to the safe consumption room. I'm sure everyone's seen the media reports on TV, and the work done by Councillor Alan Casey, an SNP councillor in Glasgow. So although part of the motion is null and void in that respect, I still want to welcome the pilot and applaud the non-judgmental, compassionate and public health approach to drug use in Scotland. Sakit Priyadarshi, who's championed safe consumption rooms for many years, was a member of the Renfrewshire Alcohol and Drug Commission, and we were very grateful for his input. And although we didn't see it as a priority for Renfrewshire at that time or part of the Commission's recommendations, Christine Laverty, Chief Officer of the HSCP, has said that we'll be watching this pilot closely to see what outcomes are achieved. So it is more of a problem for Glasgow, but we accept that some Renfrewshire residents may be in Glasgow accessing drugs, so it's pertinent to us as a local authority. So I need to veer off my script a wee bit here because I find the Conservative amendment quite offensive. I chaired the Alcohol and Drug Commission, which for over a year had experts all round the table, and they were clear that safe consumption rooms save lives. This isn't about petty politics, it's about saving lives, and that's my interest. Also, it's quite clear that while the Scottish Government takes that compassionate, non-judgmental approach and public health approach, the UK Government is adopting a very different approach. It's a punitive one based on the criminal justice system, and that was clear in the recent legislation passed in Westminster to make nitrous oxide, which people might know as laughing gas, an illegal substance, and that was voted against by the SNP Westminster group. It's widely used by young people, and as Alison Thullis MP said, you can't arrest your way out of a public health crisis. What good would that do to put young people through the criminal justice system when what they need is education and information? Laura McIntyre has already said today that we are up for a COSLA award for an education peer support project around alcohol and drugs. So that's the way that we need to go in terms of helping people with this issue. So I welcome the pilot in Glasgow, and Renfrewshire will be watching it with interest. But I'll also repeat the plea that many MPs have voiced to devolve drug laws to Holyrood and let us deal with the issue in the way that we see fit. My last point I'll say, and the reason I've accepted the Labour amendment, is I don't want to make this an idea that it is a silver bullet that's going to solve everything. There's lots of areas around the topic of drugs where we need to look at recovery, rehabilitation. So I accept that that's in the spirit of the Labour amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can I just confirm the amendment? Was it meant to replace or?
Sorry,
in addition?
if we could just clarify from the movers of the second amendment, which is Councillor McMillan and Davidson, whether it was intended to be a replacement or an addition, or whether you would accept it being an addition to the SNP motion.
I appreciate what Jacqueline has offered, and it's take it in a good spirit. I don't think I'll be telling anybody anything they don't already know, but we don't have a great problem with the motion itself. It's obviously the last line, which is quite a fairly controversial subject at the moment, and is subject to much debate out with parties and within parties. So at this precise moment, I would like to see our amendment as standing alone and not being incorporated into Councillor Cameron's.
Okay. Going to bring in Councillor Leishman then, who had submitted their amendment first, and then we'll hear from you, Ian. Okay, Councillor Leishman. Oh, sorry, official seconder, Lisa Marie Hughes.
At the moment, that's not me, so who is it?
Try again.
Okay now. Now?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, I will second and reserve for the right to respond. I don't think I can actually add much more to what Jacqueline said. I thought it was excellent.
Okay. Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. Well, firstly, my amendment is really, again, just about the last sentence. Just to clarify, the Scottish Conservatives have confirmed on record that they have no objection to a pilot of a drug consumption room. So that it's quite clear. It's also the case that the UK government has said on many occasions that they will not block a Scottish pilot. I don't know, I'm glad that Councillor Cameron acknowledged that Alistair Jack has said it between the motion being presented and now, but Alistair Jack said it on many occasions beforehand. I was beginning to wonder how many times he had to say we're not going to block it before the SNP actually accepted it. It actually seemed as if the SNP were not expecting either the UK government or the Scottish Conservatives to say, yeah, we're happy with the pilot. Like I say, we'll have a pilot, we'll look at the results, and yeah, it's really best to make decisions based on quantitative and qualitative data. I've looked at this. There are other countries around the world that already have this, particularly Canada and Australia and the Netherlands. And well, most of the data is positive. It does have some negatives, which we can perhaps learn from if we are going to make this a part of national policy. It is the case that in Vancouver and Toronto, they call them safe injection sites. It's a different name, but it's the same principle. But there is a concern that they have become a hub for drug trading and purchasing drugs, which is definitely not what we want in Scotland if they were to be implemented as part of a broader policy. So yeah, I just want to confirm that yeah, the UK government has not said that they will block it. The Scottish Conservatives have said they're happy to observe the results of a pilot. As far as devolving drugs legislation towards Scotland, yeah, the Conservative group does not endorse that, and it's simply because drugs legislation is so serious that the best way to deal with it is via the unitary state. Again, if I can make comparisons with other countries, particularly federal countries, the United States and Germany, where drugs legislation has been devolved to regional governments or state governments, it has become a legal and constitutional minefield for the control of the distribution of drugs. And if different states within the same country have different classifications of drugs, those states can actually become hubs for distribution. So I really do just think that in practical terms, it is better, well, we're all in the United Kingdom, for drugs legislation to remain within the remit of Westminster. It is the best way of prosecuting drug dealers and controlling the import of drugs. So, so yeah, I don't know what else to say. I don't have an objection to a drug consumption room pilot, but yeah, I just had a present an amendment to the last sentence.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Councillor Graham, you seconding?
Yeah, second. Thanks, Provost. Illegal drugs are illegal. There are no easy answers to drug use, and we'll see what the findings to the pilots are. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan?
Aye, thanks very much, Provost. You know, I certainly welcome, you know, this initiative that's happening just along the road in Glasgow, and it will certainly be interesting to see how it develops. It's not without its problems, and I know there's a community meeting in Glasgow tonight. It would be interesting to hear the views of some of the local people. But on the whole, we certainly would support it. I think I mentioned earlier on the horrific drug problems we have, not only here in Renfrewshire, but and beyond in Scotland, and we just can't sit back. We have to do something. Not that we are sitting back, we are doing other things, but we need to look at new ideas, and there's no doubt other countries' models have been fairly successful. Portugal is one that's always kind of highlighted, but I know there's other countries have used them as well. You know, anything that can help these people try and engage with agencies and trying to get them off drugs, I'm certainly all for. So obviously we will look forward to hearing in the findings, but as Jacqueline Cameron alluded to earlier on, this isn't a silver bullet. There's other initiatives going on, and we just need to look back in the agenda and we can see some of the things that are happening here in Renfrewshire. Obviously the last bit, the councillors is the UK government not to block the pilot. Well, they haven't done that, but this was obviously written at a time, you know, politics in this country moves very, very quickly. So that's probably a bit irrelevant at the moment. And as I say, I'm not in the don't really want to get involved in a constitutional argument about people's health. I'll leave that to others. Thank you.
Your seconder, Ian? Who was your seconder? Councillor Davidson. Caroline?
I formally second reserve the right to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Innes.
Thank you, Provost. I just wanted to say I welcome this motion. As somebody who has experienced it firsthand, I'll tell you a wee story, right? I grew up in a household and heroin was around me every single day. I seen it. I've waited in alleys while people injected. I've been witness to people ODing in my kitchen, having to bring them back to life while I'm a teenager, you know. This matters big time that we're getting to do this. I'm telling you to do, and that's it for me on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Innes. Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you, Provost, and I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Cameron's comments, and I thank Councillor Innes for his contribution, because I think that itself demonstrates the whole point. I'm a mental health nurse by trade, and I have worked with individuals who are in that circumstance every day. It's not just the fact that this will save lives, it has meaningful engagement attached to it. I completely reject the rhetoric, ignorance, and those are the only words that aren't swearing that I can think of at this moment in time, that cover what has been said by the Tory group. I think that's a disgrace to think that what is a health and social issue in Scotland should be decided down in Westminster. We've literally had commentary here about Scotland's culture and relationship with drugs, and how that's in the Scottish Parliament as well. That is always screamed across the chambers at the SNP about what are you going to do about it? What are you doing about this? Another drug death. What are you doing about it? Well, what are you doing about it? We are literally saying that this needs to be devolved because that is consistent with what is happening in Scotland, and that is from the ground up. Change happens, I said this yesterday, change happens in local government. We are the ones that will make the difference with this because we are the ones that are closest connected to our communities. Those offerings at those at this facility it's not just going to be about giving a safe space. There's going to be intervention support that they wouldn't, the individuals that might be on the streets wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to even think about having. And I think that, and do you know what? I'm most disappointed that Labour are choosing to stand alone on this, because that could have been a conversation for a different day. I think today was a day to stand together. So I'm really, really disappointed in that, because it's right. This shouldn't come down to a constitutional issue, but I think it should be respected where Scotland is in this battle against drugs. And we need to be taking that social and health approach with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Lisa Marie Hughes.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Provost. I wasn't going to speak, but I am going to come in because I appreciate that some people might not want to talk about the Constitution here, but this is constitutional. We have a UK government who's in charge of drug legislation just now who believe in criminalising people with addiction. It does not work. If you criminalise people with addiction, they end up in prison, they keep going to prison, and you ruin people's lives, you split families up. Criminalisation does not work. Before I was a councillor, I worked in social care. I worked with people with quite significant forensic backgrounds and really significant mental health issues, both exacerbated by and brought on by addiction issues. I have walked in my work to people lying face down on beds, having died. And this is at the point where we've got to the point in society where we actually think we should help these people. We need to remove criminalisation. It doesn't work. And the UK government will not do it. They still want to penalise people for addiction. It does not solve the problem. The problem is the people producing drugs. It is not the people taking them. Every one of us could be an addict in the next couple of in months. It's a trigger point for people. We need to understand that these are people. They're not a problem to be solved. They're people to be helped. And I get where you're coming from, Ian, but it is constitutional. It's too important to do this. We cannot wait until whatever government we end up in Westminster decides they should do something about this. We need to do it now, and the Scottish Government will do it, so it needs to be devolved. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Anne Dowling.
Thank you. Tell you what I'm disappointed in, and what Renfrewshire Labour are disappointed in, and that is that yet again, an issue that should be nowhere near a constitutional argument has been dragged to the centre stage of the debate in this chamber. So here's a little bit of a reality check for SNP colleagues who just cannot seem to leave this alone when we should be talking about the health and social impacts of this policy, which I think we've got broad support for in this chamber. It was the SNP who cut funding for drug treatment to the point where you can draw a correlation, almost a clear line between the grotesque excess deaths in this country, which supersedes any death rates anywhere else in the UK or Europe, or in fact, the world. So let's not be patting ourselves in the back too briskly here. That is a matter of national shame. We've also got a constitutional argument and the sheer brass neck of bringing that in when the Lord Advocate could have been asked the question, can we introduce safe consumption rooms? At any point in the 16 years that the SNP have been in charge of running Scotland, the fact that they only did it after drumming up yet another constitutional argument when people have been dropping dead by the truckloads, that's what's shocking. I am sick of it. Lots of other voters are sick of it as well, which is why we are now hearing the clamour for change. I am never going to back up Tory arguments over SNP if I can find common ground, but I am sick of this. I've got family members that I've lost to drugs as well. There's probably very few people in this room that can't say that, or a friend, but we've all got a connection. We've all got a stake in seeing this, the scourge of this drug overdose and what it does to people's lives getting addressed. And as a foster carer, which I rarely speak about in this chamber, I can tell you that it rips families apart. So I am asking that we can, on this occasion, park the constitutional arguments to the side and get back to the core of this motion and the amendments, which I think we can all get behind. Thank you.
Robert, did you want to come back in?
Aye, I'd like to come back in. Thank you, Provost. I know we're talking about the constitutional argument here, but it is relevant to this issue. It really is. Scotland wants to take a health approach to this issue, and the UK government only letting us devolve it then, devolve the policy and let us fix it if we've got the biggest drug deaths in Europe, you know. Let us do it. Let us do the work. All the work's already been done. Let us do it. Use the policies, use the laws, let us do it. But again, we've got Labour and Tory saying, no, we'll keep it with Westminster, the most out-of-date parliament in the world, you know, people that are so out of touch with society. It's ridiculous. These are actually thinking that, you know, madness. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Cathy McEwen.
Thank you, Provost. And Alison, I am very sorry to have to say this, but it is you that has the brass neck. You have simply used this motion to have your usual attack on the SNP. Not good. Thank you, Provost.
Councillor Alec Leishman.
Hi there. I can actually say the same as Councillor McEwen there. I could just swap a few words. The SNP have actually just used this as a way of criticising the opposition parties. But I would like to make a point, seeing as the SNP is doing its really cynical moral posturing on this. Again, what Councillor Anne Dowling said is absolutely correct. In the past 10 years, Nicola Sturgeon, as Health Secretary and then in her government, cut a total of £55 million from addiction services specifically. Now, I am actually pleased to see that some of that has been replenished in this year's budget, but I really can't help wondering, would we be in the position we are if it hadn't been cut in the first place? And do you know, when she was challenged about this, Nicola Sturgeon actually said, and I'm quoting verbatim, my government took its eye off the ball. That's a bit of a cavalier expression for tens of thousands of deaths. She may as well have said, oops, just before it. So I really don't think the SNP has any right to sit there on its moral high ground judging the opposition parties for this when you look at their catastrophic record on this. And there is absolutely a correlation between cuts and the number of drugs deaths. And yes, to use this as a constitutional argument to foster a quarrel with Westminster again, probably the third or fourth in the last 12 months, is really, really cynical. I'm actually quite disgusted by it. I've always had respect for my opponents, but this is too cynical. So thank you, Provost.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'll keep this short because actually Alec has mentioned what I was going to say there. It's actually that, and I welcome the drug consumption rooms, and one of the big issues we have, what we know is that people are in prison, they come out of prison, go back onto the streets, take drugs, street drugs, and they can't, there's no control over how strong those drugs are. So people need to have a safe place to be, and it'll be very interesting to see what comes out of this. And absolutely, as Councillor Cameron said earlier on, there is no silver bullet. There has to be a broad range of evidence-based investment and programmes into looking at drugs in Scotland. There are various reasons why the drug deaths and drug use in Scotland is so high. It's astronomically high compared to the rest of the UK. Now, part of that, I'm afraid, is about a 16-year reduction in investment by the Scottish Government. You ask anybody who works at the front line, whether they work in drug services, social work, or health and prison services, they'll tell you enormous reduction investment in drug services. Whilst I support this pilot, we do need to say at the same time, we call upon the Scottish Government to acknowledge and revise its reduced investment in drug services. Start to invest, because it is causing thousands of deaths a year and immense damage to our families and our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Andy Steele.
Thanks, Provost. I'll be even briefer. I've been a councillor as long as many people in the chamber and online today. I've been a councillor 6-7 years, and some of our meetings have been good. Some of our meetings have been not so good. Some of the contributions in this issue, which could have been more important, have been absolutely disgusting, and it has made me ashamed to be a member of this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Jenny.
I wasn't planning coming in here, but I think it's worth noting that a lot of Renfrewshire's drug deaths have actually been attributed to a trazolam, which is a fake street volume. So I know that we obviously were talking about safe consumption rooms here, but what the west coast of Scotland seems to be plagued in Renfrewshire in particular, was the fact that we found these machines, these presses within Renfrewshire. So they've been getting pumped out at an astronomical rate. So as I say, that's where our real concern focused as well within Renfrewshire, is getting the street drugs off of the street and working in partnership with our GP to help any patients that are inclined to go and try and buy them off the street to actually speak to your GP.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adam. Jacqueline, sum up.
Thanks, Provost. I'll try and be as brief as possible. I think it's really important to point out that the last Lord Advocate said no and said that they would prosecute people using the safe consumption rooms. So we weren't able to do it before. The current Lord Advocate, Dorothy Bain, has got a more enlightened approach, and that's why we're now taking it forward. So it's absolutely not true that it was able to be done before. People would have been prosecuted. And yet again, I'll repeat that we want to have a compassionate and a public health approach to drug use, not criminalise people. And again, I have to say, I'm not often offended in the chamber. I try my hardest to be measured in my approach. But on this occasion, when people are calling me cynical, it makes me extremely angry and offended. I chaired the Alcohol and Drug Commission for a year, and I know Councillor Leishman wasn't here at that point, but that was something I spent a lot of my time doing and meeting people around the table, lots of experts. And it's, as Councillor Innes said, the constitutional question is about doing it our way, the way that we want to do it. It's not about, a cynical political ploy. It's simply about having control to do it the way that we see fit. And I think I was quite clear in that in my initial statement. I'll give you an example. Karen McCluskey from Criminal Justice Scotland was one of the experts around the table. She was responsible for taking a public health approach to knife crime. Now look how well we did with that. Glasgow is the talk of the world for that example, and New York police officers came over here to find out how we did that. That made a tremendous difference. So if we could do that with knife crime, think what we could do with drug use if we could do things our own way. And that is not a cynical ploy. That is me simply wanting to be a person who is compassionate and helps people to save lives. And that was what I intended to do with the Alcohol and Drug Commission. And that is why I brought this motion forward. Renfrewshire Council put a lot of money and time into the Alcohol and Drug Commission, and their approach has been one of compassion. I keep repeating that word, but I think it's important because there's been a lot of cynical statements made today from both groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Okay, we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. I would ask that members note that because we have a motion and two separate amendments, there will be two votes on this matter. The first vote will be Councillor Cameron's motion, seconded by Councillor Hughes, against Councillor Leishman's amendment, seconded by Councillor Neil Graham. Whatever is successful from that vote will then go forward to be voted against the second amendment from Councillor McMillan and Councillor Davidson. So could members confirm whether they wish to vote for Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's motion or Councillor Leishman's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Anne Dowling.
Abstain.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Abstain.
Councillor Davidson.
Abstain.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour.
Abstain.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Abstain.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray. Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McCulloch.
Abstain.
Councillor MacDonald.
Abstain.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment.
Councillor McGuire. Councillor McGurk.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Abstain.
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Milet.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Roden.
Motion.
Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Steele.
Motion.
Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion. Member, could you best bear with me? We have 23 for the motion, 14 abstentions and 5 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. We move on to item 17. Oh, sorry. Bit too eager.
Thank you, members. So the successful motion from the first vote is now the motion, which is Councillor Jacqueline Cameron, seconded by Councillor Hughes, and the vote is now against the amendment by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Davidson. Could members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor Jacqueline Cameron's motion or Councillor McMillan's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Ellie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Anne Dowling.
Amendment.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour.
Amendment.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray. Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Motion.
Who's having a party?
Apologies, members. Councillor Mags McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McCulloch.
Amendment.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen. Councillor McGonigal.
Amendment.
Councillor McGuire. Councillor McGurk.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Milet.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Roden.
Motion.
Councillor Shaw.
Motion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Steele.
Motion.
And Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion. We have 23 for the motion, 19 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay. Item 17 is motion 9, and it's councillors Neil Graham and councillor Gray. Is he online?
Yes.
Yeah, just making sure he's here.
Provost, he's right there.
Oh! I honestly never saw you sitting there. Honestly, I never. My apologies.
We've got two amendments. We've got one by councillor Patterson,
Okay.
seconded by councillor McNaughton, and a second one by councillor Smith, seconded by councillor Gilmour.
Two amendments. First amendment, councillor Patterson, seconded by councillor McNaughton. Second amendment is councillor Smith. Is that right?
Seconded by councillor
With
Gilmour.
councillor Gilmour. Okay. Councillor Graham. Oh yeah, sorry. They've been sent to you. Councillor Gray, I'm so sorry. I actually can't see you over Dave's head. That's a problem. Ready to rock and roll? On you go then.
Thank you, was that one? Yes. Thank you, Provost. Having read both amendments, I won't be accepting either. It's disappointing that the SNP administration is not ruling out having ULIS in Renfrewshire, and also it looks like any future Labour administration, if there was one, isn't ruling one out either. So I won't be accepting either. We want Paisley, Renfrew, Johnson and other all town centres in Renfrewshire to thrive. Town centres have already lost customers to retail parks, shopping centres and most notably to online shopping. Low emission zones will place an additional burden on shops and businesses with premises in town centres, while out of town and online businesses operating out with any zones will benefit. We can see this by the Scottish licensing trade objection to Glasgow's ULEZ. The increase in working from home introduced during the pandemic have become a permanent feature of how we work. Some can work from home all the time, while many others have adopted a hybrid working model with less days in the office. This has led to a considerable reduction in the number of people coming into our towns and cities and a reduction in emissions from commuter traffic. Most of the buses coming into Renfrewshire are now electric, so in effect our towns have already become low emission zones. Whilst ULEZ zones have been created, may have been created with good intentions, the implementation and the results have been disastrous for businesses, taxi drivers and residents of the affected areas. Many taxi drivers have been forced out of Glasgow and cities across the UK such as Bradford, London and Birmingham. It has led to many hard-working residents whose area is covered by ULEZ and who don't have a compliant car to either move out of their homes or invest in a new car. In Paisley, we have seen the town hall all but complete with the library and museum due to be opening soon. We need to give these venues, along with businesses, a chance to thrive once again. The SNP Glasgow City Council in the first 2 months of the ULEZ implementation raised over £600,000. Labour-run London has raised over £75 million since implementation. Labour-run Birmingham council recently declared bankrupt but has raised over £418 million since implementation, and Labour-run Bradford have raised over £6.7 million in fines. ULEZ is nothing more than a cash cow for local councils who can use this as an extra tax on their residents, similar to the garden tax introduced by the SNP and the Liberal Democrats here in Renfrewshire, which has seen an increase in garden waste now not being recycled and put in the grey bin, along with an increase in car journeys to local waste recycling centres. Decisions like these have nothing to do with increasing recycling or having low emissions in towns and city centres. They're designed only by the administrations who want to raise money, and we need to reject this hidden tax. I would call on all councillors in this chamber to support our town centres today, and I agree that utilise zones will not be implemented here in Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I second the motion and reserve the right to come back. Thank you.
Okay, if you're here. Okay, the first amendment was from Councillor Patterson. Councillor McNaughton, Councillor Patterson.
Many thanks, Provost. I don't have a great deal to say that isn't included in the motion, although I did enjoy the party political broadcast by the Conservative Party just there. So let's get back to actually talking about low emission zones, I suppose. Our net zero plan has 5 key themes of clean energy, sustainable transport, circular economy, connected communities and resilient place. Nowhere in that plan has it been suggested to introduce a low emission zone, and until we make further progress in the 5 key themes I've just outlined, particularly sustainable transport and connected communities, it is not something that I think would be a suitable avenue for Renfrewshire to go down, and I could advise that is certainly the view of the council administration. So let's be clear here, nobody's planning on implementing, I realise. Now let's take a step back a minute. We've had 2 occasions today where the Conservative group called for decisions to be made based on information and data. So it's highly ironic that they seem to abandon such a position in pursuit of this motion, which for me has clearly come down from Conservative HQ. I know, given their Prime Minister's recent rollback on green and net zero policies, that the tactic is seen as some kind of vote winner in the impending general election, which I suspect is the real motivation for the motion today, to try and make out that anybody who doesn't fully rule out a ULEZ today is somehow anti-business, which is absolute nonsense. The simple fact is that this council unanimously agreed in 2019 to declare a climate emergency, and during that motion, all members of all parties and none contributed. The mover of this motion today himself contributed, warning people against paying lip service to climate change. We have to act now, he cried. It can't be lip service for a few lines in the media. And then look where we are today for a few lines in the media from the Conservative group. The change of heart and the appearance of this motion from the Conservative group is nothing but electioneering as they scrabble around trying to fortify their crumbling voter base. Councillor Leishman spoke earlier of cynical politics. Well, this Conservative motion today is a personification of the cynical politics he claims to abhor. For that very reason, I would ask all members to support the amendment, recognising that there are no plans for a low emission zone in Renfrewshire, but we will not allow this council to be hamstrung by a ploy from the Tory group as they play the electioneering game. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor McNaughton.
Thanks, Provost. I would formally second, but could I just very briefly add that, I mean, I would ask the Tories to think again on this one, because the low emission zone isn't just about the environment, it's about people's health. And they have a scant disregard in their motion for the citizens of Renfrewshire and their health. And Councillor Parsons made it quite clear, we have no intention of bringing one in, but if we need to, because of circumstances, we should not rule that out. People's health comes first.
Thank you, Councillor McNaughton. Councillor Smith.
Thanks very much, Provost. I agree with everything that Councillors Patterson and McNaughton have said. Like the drug item, this is an extremely serious issue. I am one of around 160,000 people in the UK, and I suspect other people in the chamber are as well who have asthma. I spent the first few weeks of my life in the hospital with bronchitis and other breathing difficulties, and indeed my first Christmas as well, so I'm told. And the complications to my breathing that have resulted from asthma and that experience are still ongoing. Although you can't say for certain that was caused or exacerbated by the air pollution. The UK government itself has classed pollution as the largest environmental risk to public health, as it says in my amendment. It's estimated that air pollution is responsible for 28 to 36,000 deaths in the UK. Now, as Councillor Patterson has pointed out, there is no proposal for a low emission zone or a ultra low emission zone in Renfrewshire. I would like to pick up Councillor Graham's point about the insinuation that anyone who would be not agreeing with his motion is anti-business and anti the high street. The vast majority or the majority of shoppers who travel to our high streets in Paisley and Renfrewshire travel by bus. So I don't think that you can pinpoint the decline of the high street upon a low emissions zone that hasn't been proposed, let alone voted for or enacted. So I think that's a wee bit disingenuous. I'm not sure what Councillor Patterson or McNaughton's positions are, but I would be quite happy if our amendments would be combined as one amendment, because I don't think there are any points of disagreement between the two, and I think they make different points. As Councillor McNaughton said, alongside the climate issue, which I've spoken about many times in the chamber, there is a public health emergency here. Every day you read about children who have additional complex breathing difficulties in places like London and Glasgow and Birmingham. Now, we don't know if that's the same here in Paisley, and I know we do have our NOx reports, and it's interesting to monitor that. But we can't take off the table any future options we might have to address this situation purely for kind of cheap party political points. It's really quite disappointing. So if Councillor Patterson and McNaughton are in agreement, I'd like to combine our motions. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think I know what the answer is going to be, but Councillor Patterson, do you want to confirm?
Yeah, I'd be happy to combine the amendments. As Councillor Smith said, they both arrive at the same conclusion, but they kind of cover different areas, and I'd like to thank him for the suggestion. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Chris Gilmour, you're the official seconder.
Happy to second, Provost. Can I just say I concur with Councillor Smith's views on Councillor Patterson and McNaughton's motion. It does cover all the bases. It's interesting, though, that Councillor Patterson said that in 2019, Renfrewshire Council voted unanimously for climate change emergency. And it's also, it might also be noted that with Renfrewshire Council's air pollution monitoring system within the county, that level of NOx has actually been going down. It's been trending down, you know, over the period of time, which is good news, because I think we all believe that we're trying to improve public health. Thank you very much, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmour. Okay, so Councillor James McLaren, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost.
Oh no, we won't. Who's to sum up? No, Jim? Neil Graham. I've lost it at this point. I'm a bit confused. Councillor McLaren.
So I'm not happy about the current restrictions for les zones. There are vehicles excluded that are more friendly than those permitted. Looking at electric vehicles, these are not really as clean as people might think. By introducing les, you are pushing people into buying new vehicles, and it takes a lot of energy and materials to produce any new car, let alone an electric car. Also, new cars these days have a lot of plastic in them. Plastic, which of course comes from oil, so just should point that out. Electric vehicles are very much heavier than your standard combustion engined vehicles, which means increasing tyre wear and roadside particulates are now recognised as a serious health concern. What about the charging stations? Charge Place Scotland says that the SNP government managed provider of these has only added 169 since last October, despite the Climate Change Committee setting a target of 30,000 by 2030. At this rate, they will miss the target by 12 years. Just another reason I am not in favour of les zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Okay, we'll ask Councillor Graham, Neil Graham, to sum up, and then we'll go to the vote.
Thanks, Provost. Public health is very important, and when Councillor Smith said high street decline, I said that high street decline was due to ULEZ zones. I don't have a clue what he means by that. It wasn't something that I said. And just to reiterate again, that the Conservative group are totally opposed to ULEZ and LEZ zones, and we will rule them out, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion by Councillor Neil Graham, seconded by Councillor Gray, an amendment by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor McNaughton, which now also includes the addition of Councillor Smith and Gilmour's amendment. Could members confirm whether they are voting for Councillor Graham's motion or Councillor Patterson's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Amendment.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ann Dowling.
Amendment.
Councillor Burns.
Amendment.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Amendment.
Provost Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson.
Amendment.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilmour.
Amendment.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray.
Motion.
Councillor Hood. Councillor Hughes.
Amendment.
Councillor Innes.
Amendment.
Councillor Leishman.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor Kenny McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Max McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor James McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McCulloch.
Amendment.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor McEwen. Councillor McGonigal.
Motion.
Councillor McGuire.
Amendment.
Councillor McGurk. Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Councillor McNaughton.
Amendment.
Councillor Montgomery.
Amendment.
Councillor Mullen. Councillor Mylett.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Rodden.
Amendment.
Councillor Shaw.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith.
Amendment.
Councillor Steele.
Amendment.
And Councillor Hannigan has voted for the amendment. I have 6 for the motion, 36 for the amendment. The amendment's carried.
Thank you, councillors. Do we have any amendments to the final 3 motions?
We have no amendments to item 18. We do for 19.
19,
and we don't
okay.
for 20.
Okay. Okay, motion 10, the wildflower planting workshops, councillors Innes and McEwen. We have no amendments. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Provost. I'll be brief because I know we were trying to get out of here for 2 o'clock. No, obviously these wildflower workshops took place with the conservation volunteers and the Team Up to Clean Up campaign with local groups around Renfrewshire. I know Hampden, Houston and Shinnon and in Paisley. I know from my own ward in Houston, the Be Happy Gardening group, they had an excellent time and learnt an awful lot about planting wildflowers for many years to come. So I just thought I would bring this motion here today to just highlight and thank the conservation volunteers and Team Up to Clean Up for doing that work, and hopefully we can see more of that in the future as we try to tackle the climate emergency heads on in Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Yeah, well done to them. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Provost. I'll be brief as well. It goes without saying that I'm absolutely delighted to second this motion, but I'm also delighted to see how far the relationship between Team Up to Clean Up and the council has grown and grown. When we started this Team Up to Clean Up campaign, it was to follow on and lead with local groups like the Houston crew and many others. So thanks for showing us the way. And whoa, hasn't it just grown and grown? So really, the reason our campaign just grows and grows, keep using that, is the ongoing support from our amazing, absolutely amazing volunteers. And let's not forget Street Scene as well. So to finish off, Provost, thanks to our conservation volunteers. And I was doing all right as well. Right, okay. And that's volunteers in Houston and Shinnon and Paisley for taking advantage, and I hope a lot more do, of wildflower planting workshops, and thus making sure that we all of us benefit, as this is enhancing our environments, of course it is, and also it's ensuring, and this is the most important part, we're doing all we can to tackle the climate emergency. Well done, everybody.
Thank you. I never thought a motion about wildflowers was going to end up party political there. Anyway, thank you. Can we agree the motion? Too late. So we're now in motion 11. It's Councillors Innes and McFarlane, and we do have an amendment from
Councillor Neil Graham.
Councillor Neil Graham and Councillor Leishman. It's sent to you. So Councillor Innes, when you read, if you read the amendment from the Conservative group, you can just start talking whenever you're ready. Councillor Clark, do you have your hand up for this item, or was it the previous item? I thought I had missed you there.
I Provost, I don't accept the amendment.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Innes. Yeah, you want to carry on?
Thank you. I'll be brief, folks. Okay, but this is a big big subject. Obviously, the cost of living is the issue that most of our constituents are finding it difficult with the most at the moment. Whether that's the rise in inflation, food prices going up in our supermarkets, mortgages going up, or energy bills. So that's why I thought I'd bring this motion here today on the energy bills one, because it's about to get colder and it's going to become more apparent to people that they need this support. Obviously, this support was in place last year and it got stopped in March this year. Not enough's happening from the UK government in terms of helping people through this cost of living crisis, and that's why I would ask that Renfrewshire Council write to the UK government and ask them to reintroduce this support for this winter. The UK government have inflicted a decade of Tory austerity on us already. People are already unable to cope, and this is just the cherry on top of the cake. These energy bills. The Scottish government do all they can to mitigate austerity. We've got innovative policies such as the Scottish Child Payment. But as I said, the power with this lies with the way the UK government have handled the energy crisis here. So I would ask that we write to the UK government and urge them to make this support available to our constituents again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillor McFarlane?
Yep, formally seconded with my right to speak, Provost. Cheers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Neil Graham?
Thank you, Provost. Following on from Councillor McEwen's congratulations to our group, I would firstly like to thank both Councillor Innes and Councillor McFarlane for bringing this motion to full council, but accept it must be difficult for them to not only acknowledge the UK government's decision to support every household in the UK with their energy costs with an unprecedented £12 billion, but to ask for an extension of this Conservative policy. So I'd like to thank them for their support of the UK government on the issue. It's very positive news that the energy price cap will be lowered to under £2,000 for the first time since April 2023 and the biggest drop since October 2021. There are many global factors at play as to why we had the energy price spike, but with the main one being Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. We must do more here in Scotland to diversify our energy output and build more nuclear power plants so that Scotland does not fall behind. We are seeing with the global energy sector slowly stabilising and prices slowly in the decline. This is welcome news, which I'm sure we all agree with. Following on from the good work by the UK Government on the Energy Support Scheme, we would ask the Scottish Government to step up and to bring forward the payment date for the winter heat payment from February 2024 to winter this year, when the most vulnerable people need this money most to help with their energy costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Provost. I'll formally second. I'm sorry, fatigue setting in. I'll formally second Councillor Graham's amendment, and I may come in later.
Okay. Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you, Provost. I genuinely want to thank Councillor Innes and McFarlane for raising the issue of fuel poverty at this time when last year it drove millions of households into debt and left many people hungry and cold. The Labour Group support this motion as we've got a deep concern for people in need, although it is a short-term answer. And so I would direct these councillors to look at Labour's long-term plan, which would reduce power bills on a more permanent basis. So we support what you're doing, but we also would like a much better plan to reduce power bills more permanently. In 2017, the SNP pledged to create a public energy company in Scotland. If this hadn't been yet another broken promise, then we wouldn't need this motion because we would have our own power company under state control, and that would have been a better solution. Sorry that he didn't do this. And also, the selling off of Scottish assets to Swedish companies like Vattenfall don't help us to have the resources to help poor people at this time. But I am grateful to you, Councillor Innes, and I know that you've raised the issue of rural poverty more recently, that it's not just people in the towns and things, that there are people in rural situations who really need this help at this time, and I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. One point before we start is the Conservative amendment is factually incorrect. It's not £151 to every household, it's only to those in standard variable rates. So if he's happy to correct that would be make his amendment actually correct. The insinuation is that every single household is going to benefit from the falling rate cap. It's not from the 1st of October. These are points that have been raised here before, and I've difficulty with Councillor Graham's attempts to try and shift everything towards the Scottish Government again. I get that. I get your unionists, and that's what you want to do, and that's your job. But you need to understand that energy is reserved. You know, we've had this argument debate for years and years. And what happens with the UK Government with regards to the £12 billion is, remember, this is public money pumped in to stabilise a private operation, which was privatised by the Tories in the 1980s. Now, people are starting to think now that people in low income that are struggling now with their energy bills from this year and last year. They haven't. They've been struggling with their energy bills since the 1980s when the Tories brought it in. People need to remember that power cards, key cards, the lowest income families in our society are penalised the most to get access to energy, which is a basic human right. Energy, water and shelter and food. So this idea now that the market has been stabilised and there's this and that happening is complete and utter nonsense. The market is not stable. It never will be stable until you bring it back under public ownership and you start to design a market and a system in energy production which meets the needs of the people in that community, not the needs of the business and the companies. Now, if as a matter of fact, I know I've said this before, see when the markets crashed, it was an organised crash by the cartel. That is the energy companies, 6 of them. They blackmailed the UK Government into saying, we will leave the domestic market if you don't subsidise our operations here. That was pure blackmail. And I said, there's a cartel operating. I've said this before in this chamber. There's a cartel operating in this country. And it's a cartel that's supported by the UK Government with regards to their operation. Their operation should be run for the benefit of the people of the United Kingdom, whose energy it is that's been extracted out of the North Sea, extracted with the gas. It belongs to us. It should always belong to us. It should never have been privatised by the Tories. And this idea that people, as I said before, are suffering now, they've always been suffering because the market was fixed in favour of capitalism and it's fixed in favour of these private companies. So let's get this point across here with regards to energy. Energy should be in public ownership. It's as simple as that. Then the production of that energy is then distributed to our communities who need it the most.
That's all I'm saying. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. So I'd like to look at just what the council can provide here. I'd like to see the council introduce energy advice for everyone, not just those on low wages, as well as contribute to climate change and
I'd
all.
like to hear Councillor McLaren speak. There seems to be a lot of noise coming from over there. Sorry.
Energy advice for everyone, as well as contribute to climate change and all the need and can make improvements. The organisation such as LEAP in Lochwinnoch provided a very useful service in the past, giving advice over insulation of houses. Something like that could be rolled out across the council area and would be a very big step towards improving our climate and carbon emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Andy Steele.
Got me scribbling, Provost, sorry. No, it's good to hear Councillor Graham looking out for Councillor McLaren there. That was nice. It's changed days since you usurped him as leader and led your group to a 50% reduction in your councillors at the last election. That was good to hear. It really was. I got a very brief point to make. I suggest Councillor Graham goes round the doors and asks people in Renfrewshire, not just his ward, make free with the whole place. Ask them if they're grateful for what the UK government's done for them. I think you'll get a very short answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Councillor Roger Doig.
Thank you. Jamie, there is specialised advisors on energy already employed by Renfrewshire Council. And I had to use one of them when we went into our new flat because the gas board told us that our meter was actually resident. I think it was in Eastwood somewhere. And it was one of these energy advisors that sorted all that out for Andy and I. So they do exist and people do use them and they go anywhere in Renfrewshire to help you. So tell that to your residents. The other thing is that LEAP do not stay just in Lochwinnoch. LEAP came up to Linwood and gave me an advice on energy saving in Linwood before we moved out of there. They'll go anywhere they're asked. So again, the residents throughout Renfrewshire can deal with that service that's basically there as well. So make sure you've got your facts before you start mouthing things off.
Thank you, Councillor Audrey Doig. Okay, we're going to go to the votes. Oh no, hold on. Councillor Innes, do you want to sum up? You're all right. Okay, go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. It's a roll call vote. We have a motion for Councillor Innes, seconded by Councillor McFarlane, and an amendment from Councillor Neil Graham, seconded by Councillor Leishman. Could members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Innes's motion or Councillor Neil Graham's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Ellie Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Ann Dowling.
Motion.
Councillor Burns.
Motion.
Councillor Jacqueline Cameron.
Motion.
Provost Cameron.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Andy Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Roger Doig.
Motion.
Councillor Gilmour.
Motion.
Councillor Gillian Graham.
Motion.
Councillor Neil Graham. Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
Councillor Hood.
Motion.
Councillor Hughes.
Motion.
Councillor Innes.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
He's having the same kind of day as me.
Councillor Kenny McLaren. Councillor Kenny McLaren. Councillor Max McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor James McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor McCulloch.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Councillor McGonigal. Councillor McGonigal had indicated in the meeting chat he was having difficulty with his sound, but he was voting for the motion.
Yeah.
Councillor McGuire.
Motion.
Councillor McGurk. Councillor McMillan.
Motion.
Did you say Councillor McGonigal was voting for the motion?
Yes, that's what he's recorded in the chat. Provost.
That's what you said. That's
Councillor McNaughton.
Motion.
Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Milet.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Which one am I voting for?
Motion.
Councillor Patterson.
Motion.
Councillor Rodden.
Motion.
Councillor Shaw.
Sorry, Councillor Shaw's left the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Steele.
Aye, motion.
Councillor Hannigan has voted for the motion and Councillor Kenny McLaren has inserted in the meeting chat he's voting for the motion. So I have 37 for the motion, 4 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Thank you. And this is the final motion, you'll be glad to know. And what a lovely motion to end with. I'm sure that Councillor Shaw is annoyed that he couldn't stay to speak to this, but I don't think there are any amendments. Don't think anyone is going to disagree. Who is going to move this? Okay. Okay. Lisa Marie.
Is it all right now? I'm beginning to feel offended because that's happened every time I've spoken.
It sounded like a ghosty movie.
Thanks, Provost. The motion is self-explanatory, and I have to say, John will be gutted that he's not here. We have, I think, the pipe band and Gaelic and Trad and Scots culture generally are supported across the chamber, but and our administration certainly support it. But I don't think any of us would deny that John's been a bit of a driver of this within our group. He's really passionate about it. He is a pipe band da through and through. I just think we just wanted to have on record how incredibly well our Wains have done in becoming Scottish pipe band world champions. That is an incredible accolade for these young people and their families. Their pipe major has done lots and lots of work with them. They have been gaining awards throughout the last few years, but to get to the point where they're at world champion level is wonderful, and they've had a great season this year. Lots of wins, including winning their stage at Renfrewshire, which I was there for, and I cried a wee bit because there are wins. It makes you really proud when you see the big council logo on the side of the drum. It's really good. So yeah, just to put on record our support for them for continued success, and that I think we as a council are all very proud of them.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Audrey Doig.
Thank you, Prof.
Try again. There.
Just to say, Provost, yes, very, very proud of the Renfrewshire Schools Pipe Band and doing what they've done this year. But to let you all know, to go and support them, and also Kilbarchan Pipe Band are playing on the 14th of October in Paisley Town Hall at the Mod. They're basically being the Renfrewshire's representatives, one of the first actual days of the Mod on the Saturday. There's still tickets, so you can all buy them and go and support them. And congratulations to both of them. They're both a great years. Thanks.
Yeah, they're playing at the Mod opening event, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of people there to see them. Councillor Jim Patterson.
Thanks. Happy to second this motion in the absence of Councillor Shawhead to leave. The only comment I would kind of add to what has already been said by Councillor Hughes and Councillor Doig is that I suppose this is evidence of what happens when you invest in your music service, which is the decision we took not to take the easy way out last administration when there was tremendous pressure on all councils to reduce their music service. It was seen as an easy saving, but that's not what we were felt inclined to do. We decided to actually do the opposite and invest in the service, and now it's paying dividends now. Now, I know it's now a government policy to music tuition free, but we were doing that when it was still the council's full responsibility in terms of free music. So it's just to say that, just to bring that up really, that when you get out what you invest in, and that's what's happened this occasion due to all the hard work for Chief Bowles, the pupils, and also our music service led by James Cunningham. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We're all very proud of them. Councillor Andy Doig.
Thanks, Provost. Just to briefly say, I mean, Councillor Audrey Doig and I, we've had first-hand experience of listening to the Renfrewshire Schools Band at the Scottish Schools Piping Championships in East Ayrshire earlier this year. And they were and Councillor MacDonald, Janice MacDonald was there also the same day. And they were absolutely fantastic. They won the third prize in the freestyle event and they just blew the whole thing away. It was just amazing. And yeah, I'm very pleased as well that at the Our Language Our Music event that Councillor Doig referred to, it was myself that liaised with the council officers who liaised with the mod organisers to make that happen, because I also felt it was important that Kilbarchan Pipe Band were honoured as well because of their own achievements. But that takes nothing away from the Renfrewshire Schools Band. I think they're both excellent. I think they'll both do Renfrewshire proud, and I'm looking forward to listening to them. Thanks.
Yeah, which is why we have to support them. So I think we're all in agreement. Well done to our Wains, who are world champions. And just so that you all know, we are in the beginnings of organising a civic reception to celebrate the success with them sometime towards the end of the year. Okay, thanks for your attendance today. Thanks so much, and I'm sorry it went a bit awry at times, but we got there in the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost.